The Papah Trail. Let's go, 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 go. Yeah, 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 yeah. For the love of money, niggas come around. For the love, a nigga won't take it. 12 if it's for the money, niggas gon' bark and they bite like a motherfucking dog. Got a party like a motherfucking dog. For that cat, I am gon' roof and I'm barking at that cat and I am gon' take the roof off and I'm riding that ride. Cause I'm getting money. I'm laughing all the way to the motherfucking bank. And I'm telling her, tell me later if she thinking what I'm thinking. Damn me getting money. I walk about the bank and I stuck up in the wheel. Headed to my next big destination. Somewhere where I'm gonna be faded, sipping on a motherfucking Molotov, feet in the fucking sand, looking like a motherfucking distant fucking land myself. Wherever I land, I must be fly myself a name.
Part of the time. And I'm not talking Saturday Night Live, I'm talking real life. By the end of this video, I think if you don't think so right now, there might be a little part, at least a little part of you that just might agree with me. Let's start with this. We all know he is a physical comedian. Just watch this.
Options were limited.
You won't be seeing much more physical humor in my show. I want to go way back now. It'll be...
So you get the idea. He falls a lot. He falls a lot through comedy. But did you ever notice who else falls a lot? And hey, they kind of look like, in fact, that might even look a little bit more like Jim Carrey than Jim Carrey looks like Jim Carrey in this. That's Joe Biden. I'll show it. Sure looks like a lot like Jim Carrey to me. That's supposed to be Biden getting off the helicopter. They even have similar walks and forward head postures. I see it. Similar length arms in comparison to their knees. And we know how Hollywood likes to put things in plain sight. We also know they do a ton of predictive programming. This Simpsons was 15 years before this, even to the sign falling down. Predictive programming.
I'm free on the 7th at 7.
Did you see it? I saw one thing at first. Watch the timing of his hand. His hands, and then watch. You see it? Watch. I sync it up here. Ready? There it is. Watch. Yep. And the hands. Timed up at the same time. The hands at the same time. That's Jim Carrey. That is Jim Carrey. I'm going to show you more. Okay, here it is, the full clip. You'll see he salutes and he puts his hand up twice, just like we saw in the movie Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey. And then tell me this isn't Jim Carrey's comedic falling. There's no way Joe Biden is this quick on his feet and moves. And watch how he does this little jog. The salute at the end here, it is Jim Carrey. And I'm going to show you more still. Did you ever see this clip where it looks like Biden's wearing a mask? Again, truth in plain sight. We all know that he did the movie The Mask. Could they have been trying to tell us something? I think so. Literally, the first time I ever saw that clip of Biden going up the stairs, I thought to myself, before I was even a truther, wow, he moves just like Jim Carrey going up there. And then I looked into it, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. You decide. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And of course, everything in this video was only said for entertainment purposes. I'm not even serious.
We have breaking to be Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro after being captured by U.S. forces actively aboard the USS Iwo Jima. Now, this picture was posted by Trump and the White House, and we see what appears to be Maduro in a gray Nike sweatsuit with a water bottle in his hands and what looks like very dark glasses or a blindfold over his eyes and headphones over his ears. Now, Maduro appears to be buckled into the ship, and right now, Maduro is en route to New York, where he faces charges of conspiracy to import drugs, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and a narco-terrorism conspiracy charge. Now, Trump says he will face trial on U.S. soil. MS Now has not been able to independently verify the legitimacy of this photo, but this is the only photo posted by Trump and the White House of Maduro since his capturing overnight. Trump just wrapped a press conference where he said, for now, in the absence of Maduro, the United States will run Venezuela. Trump also said the U.S. will oversee oil production in the country.
Come on, really? Are you guys even trying anymore? I mean, you saw the news on this guy, right? This guy who just looks suspiciously like Mr. Weapons of Mass Destruction, which don't exist, by the way. Yeah, there are big bombs, but not ones that will blow up the entire Earth. But let's focus on this. Why don't we start at the good old symmetry test before we get to the good old smoking gun? Looks pretty symmetrical. Eyebrows, eyes, even the hairline, the mustaches, and they seem to even have, that's a scar. That's not a forehead line, that's a scar that seems to be pretty similar to the one right here. And it looks like there was something else there. And well, you can't have the same dent in your head, so let's fill it and just put a mole on top. Cover it up with a mole. They'll never notice. Do you want to see the real thing? The real? Here you go. Oh, but before we get there, maybe you notice their chins. They're a little different, right? We got a butt chin and then a little crease in the chin. Well, yeah, it's real hard to snip and tuck. And I mean, you know, chin augmentation is a thing, right? But I don't think it's that, because I think they're shapeshifters. But we'll get back to shapeshifting in a second, right after I show you these nice little pyramid facial markings. You see those? 1, 2, 3, and 1, and a 2, and a 3. And I'll make sure I circle them for you, just for some of you that might not be able to see as well. You see, he had 3 very noticeable marks, and they were probably removed or he shape-shifted. And now they're still there, but they're just a little bit more faint. But hold on, there's more. If we just move on down his face, and we'll get to that one in a second, but let's look at these, because you can see right in relation to the mustache, right there. And then you can see there's a little mark that used to be there. And yeah, you see those? That's a hole there, and they added a mole, because they do both. They do both. But of course, all this is for entertainment purposes, people. I don't really think that all the former political leaders and all the people on the TV and all the people in the music industry are shape-shifting fallen angels who can age reduce and live a lot longer than you and I. And if you think that's crazy, go find that video of mine. And there's a part 2 coming real soon. Entertainment only.
We are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure. We're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it.
Iraq parallel? Well, we got one guy making the same case for both wars. And yes, it's who you think.
Saddam Hussein's a threat to my country. He's a threat to our way of life. He needs to go.
Maduro is an existential threat to the people of the United States.
It is time for Maduro to go.
Now, to be fair, some things have changed over the last 20 years. You know, back in the Iraq War, but now we know that that was it. But you know what? You know what? I'm not even going to play around anymore. It. Hit me with the works. Iraq, Venezuela, go!
We're giving them
full opportunity to do it the easy way. And when it doesn't work, we'll do it the hard way.
If we can do things the easy way, that's fine. And if we have to do it the hard way, that's fine too.
Chemical weapons is a threat to the United States.
Fentanyl poses a chemical weapons threat to the United States.
Al-Qaeda terrorists inside Iraq.
Al-Qaeda of our hemisphere.
If we can get rid of Saddam, it could really begin to transform the region.
There's an opportunity to transform the entire region.
Bringing freedom and democracy.
Democracy and freedom
can serve as a
beacon of hope.
Shock and awe.
Shock and awe indeed.
Picture this. The year is 2009. President Bill Clinton, former leader of the free world, stands tall and proud amidst the brothers of Papah Incorporated. He's honored to join. His voice rings out, resonating with the deep respect he holds for this historic institution. He shares, "Throughout my life, I've strived to emulate the vision of the fraternity's esteemed founders, the Honorable Brothers A. Langston Taylor, Charles N. Brown, and Leonard F. Morse." He pauses, the gravity of the fraternity's motto sinking in. Culture for service, service for humanity. And even today, the former President's Association and brotherhood with Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated remains strong and unwavering, a testament to his enduring commitment to service, to culture, to humanity, a testament to the power of fraternity, unity, and shared ideals.
I'm very Beta Sigma fraternity. Throughout my life, I've always strived to exemplify the vision of the fraternity's founders, the Honorable Brothers A. Langston Taylor, Charles I. Brown, and Leonard F. Morse, who established the fraternity's motto, culture for service and service to humanity. After leaving the White House, I continued my lifelong commitment as a private citizen by establishing the William J. Clinton Foundation. Since then, the foundation has grown into a global non-governmental organization with more than 1,400 staff and volunteers in more than 40 countries and other cities around the world. We focus our work on fighting the HIV/AIDS pandemic in the developing world, and now malaria too, on ending the childhood obesity epidemic in the United States, combating global climate change with projects that actually create jobs, and promoting economic opportunity in our own country, in Africa and Latin America. I also have a School of Public Service at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock, which is the only graduate school in America that gives a degree in public service as opposed to public policy. Our Clinton Global Initiative, which brings together global leaders, business executives, and directors of non-governmental organizations from all around the world at the opening of the United Nations every year, has gotten commitments to take action on all kinds of pressing issues. Our members have now made more than 1,400 commitments that already have improved the lives of 200 million people in 150 countries. I am very honored to see Philip Randolph, Dr. Roderick Page, and my great friend John Lewis, with whom I had the pleasure of working closely during my presidency. This fraternity was one of the first Greek letter organizations to implement national directives that made a tremendous impact throughout communities all across our nation. The programs of Phi Beta Sigma, including Bigger and Better Business, Social Action, and Education, are truly outstanding. And I'm especially proud of the fraternity's Sigma Beta Club, established and organized in 1950, which has provided leadership, mentoring, and social exposure to our young men in middle schools and high schools throughout cities all across America. I'm honored to associate with men of such great culture and commitment to service to humanity. So God bless the Brotherhood of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, and God bless America. Thank you.
I have no doubt that I am Bill Clinton's son.
30-year-old Danny Williams claims he's the biological son of Bill Clinton, and he's now pleading with infamous blue dress for a DNA test.
I would love to see the DNA test done.
Williams, who is from Hot Springs, Arkansas, says his mom, a former prostitute, said she had sex with the 42nd president on 13 occasions, and that he is the only Caucasian man that she had relations with. In his open letter to Lewinsky, Williams writes that it's not about politics or money, but that he's desperate to finally understand who he is and where he comes from. 17 years ago, Williams' mother sold her story to a tabloid, which claims it looked at both Clinton's DNA markers and his, and came to the conclusion that Clinton was not his father. Now Williams is trying to raise $100,000 with a GoFundMe campaign to help with legal representation. Be sure to watch Inside Edition.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
In one term, I need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
We did it, Joe. You're gonna be the next president of the United States. I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context. I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun. I did not know that. If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that. But my staff will deal with that later. Who doesn't love a yellow school bus, right? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right? Just, there's something about the, and most of us, many of us went to school on the yellow school bus, right? Wheels on the bus go round and round. So I just got, I do believe that we should have rightly believed, but we certainly believe that certain issues are just settled. Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly we're not.
No, that's right. And that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled times. It is the Caribbean nations, island nations. In the Western Hemisphere, that is where the Caribbean is. We are also in the Western Hemisphere. They are our neighbors. And talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. I think it's very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present. First and foremost, I believe that we gotta take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously. So you're now no longer are you necessarily keeping those private files in some file cabinet that's locked in the basement of the house. It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud that exists above us, right? Before I begin, I do want to say, when we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water. As a United States Senator, I was proud to co-sponsor, and then as Vice President, it was my honor, with the President, the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. A future where we can see what is possible, unburdened by what has been. We have dreams. We can see what is possible, unburdened by what has been. I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know? Who saw what could be unburdened by what had been. I love Venn diagrams. I really do. I love Venn diagrams. It's just something about those three circles. And I like to think about a lot of things in the context of a Venn diagram. I love Venn diagrams. Always ask, is there a Venn diagram for this? I'm telling you, it's fascinating when you do. So Venn diagram, those three circles, right? I asked my team to do a Venn diagram of where these attacks are happening. So voting rights, women's reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights. And of course, there was a huge intersection. Sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language. We did it, Joe. High five. Yes.
I'm going up to my granddaughter's birthday in New York. Who's she next? Who's next? She beat Trump so badly in the debate, he's scared to death to beat her again. That's a fact. Mr. President Trump, former President Trump, get a life, man. Help these people.
Will you hold him accountable? You said you were going to hold those accountable.
Public will hold them accountable. You better than the press hold them accountable because you know the truth.
As smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you all. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass. I need that hat. Want my autograph? Hell no. You know my name. Come on. I ain't going that far. Yeah. Do a selfie. There you go. No one should make the American people question whether their governments will be making sure that this is acting on strikes. They'll be there. We will, all of us. Eric Dean of the Iron Workers. Tim Driscoll of Bricklayers. April Bell of the SEIU. And to the Gila Indian River community, the Gila, nothing wrong with me. Down to Chris Von Halen. What the hell's his name? He's new. Chris and I have been doing this for so many years now, it's getting old. Or at least I'm getting old. I'm Joe Biden's husband. And you can see she doesn't have any strong notions or ideas. You know, teaching is not the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American. Mr. President-elect and former President and Donald, congratulations. What's your name? Was that right? All right. Well, thanks for being here. Have a seat, everyone. Remember the last guy when he was president, he said we have he had every week, we have infrastructure week.
To democracy. What are you going to talk with him about? What are you going to tell the Trump?
We felt over the next 10 years. We have legislation we passed. It's just only now just really kicking in.
What do the states of the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Okay.
What are the states of the storm zone? What do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone.
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board. Now, not only that, our fellow Americans are putting their lives on the line to do this dangerous work and receive death penalties. Some received death penalties yesterday as a result of reckless, irresponsible, relentless disinformation and outright lies that continue to flow.
President Biden, do you think that you can get a hostage deal by the end of your term?
You think you're going to get hit in the head by a camera behind you? What am I doing?
There are hugs where you just throw up your... Joe Biden wouldn't let Hillary go as they met on the tarmac at Scranton Airport. About 4 seconds into the hug, they semi-disengage. Nothing to see here, right? Wrong, because the vice president wouldn't unhand Hillary for almost 16 seconds.
Notice how many times she tries to tap. He lets it go. He does not. She tap out. Nope, she's just, no, he's still holding on. Okay, second tap out. For God's sake, Joe, you got to let go.
The latest awkward hug would not have been microanalyzed if it hadn't been for all the other times when he gently rearranges a young girl's hair and whispers in her ear, then rearranges some more. There's nothing pervy here. The VP knows he's on camera at these swearing-in ceremonies, and the parents are right there as he leans in for a kiss. The VP is known as a close talker. He even does it to the president. Perhaps his most famous hands-on moment came when he put his hands on the wife of Secretary Ash.
I've got a lot of things to give out here.
Conservatives panned it.
This is the creepiest thing.
And so did some liberals.
No, that ain't right, man. That ain't right. Why are you appeared to smell her hair?
At least the VP didn't get that close to Hillary. Now, Hillary and President Obama have come a long way in their history of hugging. From this paltry use hug, Hillary defeated her. So close that Hillary closed her eyes. They even gazed into each other's eyes. This was a hug so novel for these two, it looked like the cover of a romance novel. Jeannie Mo, CNN, New York.
Let me say again, I have one word, don't.
People, because they asked me what I do, and I said, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care. They've got to be stopped.
Did you tell yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out?
Yes or no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No, A, B, C,
Director,
D, E, F.
it sounds like you don't.
U.S. President Joe Biden has been memed boarding Air Force One on his way to got his foot caught and fell off his bike while cycling in Delaware, where he was celebrating the 45th anniversary of his wedding with First Lady Jill Biden. During a graduation ceremony at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado, during the signing of a law called the Inflation Reduction Act, President Biden looked completely lost about what was happening. He appeared to freeze during Juneteenth celebrations at the White House. Subscribe and follow Strange Facts for more videos like these.
Brace yourself. First up, we have the infamous was. Our commander-in-chief thought he saw someone, maybe a ghost? Or maybe he forgot that he just shook Schumer's hand.
From New England and then just moved to Texas, put on a fake accent and a hat, and then suddenly everyone was like, that's grandfather tried to overthrow the United States government through the business plot. His father was the CIA director, a vice president, and president of the United States. And then George W. Bush moved to Texas, pretended to be really into cowboy shit. Look at me, I'm a real man. Even though I'm completely sober because I drank so goddamn much, I got a DUI in the 70s. And then I had to go join AA and become a fake Christian. Then let me tell you all what I did. Put on a cowboy hat, told people they wouldn't have a beer with me. I pretended to be a Vietnam soldier, even though I was a draft dodger.
This woman went from, the files are on my desk, to, there is no list, nothing in here worth releasing, then this.
Epstein files are going to get released? We hope soon. FBI's been. Okay. So. Any dates? No, you know what it is? Tons and thousands. Videos. Yeah. And it's all with little kids.
Did you know that the United States invented YouTube, Instagram, and Netflix? China invented TikTok, Temu, CapCut, Shane, Alipay, and WeChat. Sweden invented Spotify, Minecraft, and Clarina. Finland invented Angry Birds, Clash of Clans, and Supercell. The United Kingdom invented Shazam, Nintendo. South Korea invented Kakao Talk, Naver, Coupang, Samsung Pay, and Melon. Germany invented SoundCloud and Flixbus. Russia invented Telegram, Yandex, and FaceApp. France invented BlaBlaCar, Deezer, and Doctolib. Australia invented Canva, Atlassian, and Afterpay. Canada invented Shopify, Wattpad, and BlackBerry. Brazil invented iFood and Nubank. Mexico invented Clip, Bitso, and Kabak. The Netherlands invented Booking.com, WeTransfer, and Adyen. Switzerland invented Proton, VPN, Doodle, and Swiss Quote. Norway invented Kahoot, Opera, and Tidal. What has your country invented?
Did you know there's a country in Central America that doesn't seem to fit in with the rest? That country is Belize, and its unique language is English, not Spanish. This is because it was a British colony known as British Honduras until its independence in 1981. Furthermore, its culture has a strong Caribbean influence, with Garifuna, Creole, Mayan, and Mennonite communities living together in a small but diverse territory. Instead of using the peso like other neighboring nations, Belize uses the Belizean dollar. Did you know its border with Guatemala is disputed? Guatemala has never fully recognized Belize as an independent country and claims part of its territory. That's why that borderline appears dotted on Google Maps, a sign that it remains a disputed boundary between its language, history, diversity, and border conflict. Belize is undoubtedly the most different country in Central America.
Right now, Sudan is facing one of the darkest moments in its modern history. According to reports from the United Nations and international media, heavy fighting in the city of El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, has left around 1,500 civilians dead in recent days as the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, claimed control of the area. Satellite analysis by the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab shows areas consistent with mass casualty sites and widespread destruction. The World Health Organization has reported that more than 460 people were killed during an attack on a hospital. Thousands of residents remain trapped inside the city, cut off from food, water, and medical care. This conflict began in April 2023 when the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the RSF, which multiple investigations linked to support from the UAE, Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar, and Russia's Wagner, now Africa Corps, turned their weapons on each other. Behind the violence lies a powerful motive: gold. Sudan's rich gold reserves have become a lifeline for armed groups. Reports suggest that the RSF controls many mines and exports gold through Dubai, using profits.
Trump just praised Putin, and Ukraine is paying the price. Russia launched its biggest attack of 2020. Called it a betrayal. Trump said Putin kept his word. Here's the timeline. Trump personally asked Putin for a one-week ceasefire, extreme cold temperatures. Putin agreed Sunday to Sunday, no strikes on energy infrastructure, and he honored it for exactly 7 days. But here's what nobody's talking about. That whole week, Russia was preparing, stockpiling missiles, drones, ammunition. February 1st, ceasefire expires February 3rd. Russia unleashes the most severe strike of 2026. Residential buildings hit, power plants destroyed, over 1,000 buildings without heat. Ukraine's foreign minister said it clearly. Putin waited for temperatures to drop and stockpiled weapons to continue attacks. So Trump negotiated a humanitarian pause to help civilians. Putin used that week to reload, then struck the moment it ended. And Trump's response? He kept his word. 1 week is a lot. We'll take anything. Not, this was exploited. Not, we got played. Just, he kept his word. Trump pushed for peace, got his ceasefire. Putin used it to prepare the year's biggest attack. And when it happened, Trump praised him for the timing. Ukraine's power grid crippled. Russia restocked, and Trump called it keeping your word. Trump just sent Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to sit down with Iran today in Oman. Sounds like diplomacy, right? Except here's what happened in the 72 hours before that meeting. An Iranian Shahed drone flew straight at the USS Abraham Lincoln. An F-35 shot it out of the sky. Hours later, Iranian gunboats tried to board a U.S. oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. A Navy destroyer had to race in and escort it out. Then the State Department told every American in Iran, leave now. Don't wait for us. We can't help you get out by land if you have to. It's the setup for a peace talk. But here's where it gets wild. The day before the meeting, Iran opened an underground missile city for the cameras. Their top general walked through it, showing off the Khorramshahr 4, a ballistic missile that can hit every U.S. base in the Gulf in under 12 minutes. And he said on camera, we've switched from defense to offense. We think only of victory. So Trump sends his son-in-law to negotiate while Iran is literally showing the world the missiles they'd use against us. Trump says, no nukes, no missiles, stop killing protesters. Iran says, we'll only talk about nukes. Everything else is off the table. Both sides showed up in Oman today. One came with an aircraft carrier parked off the coast. The other came fresh from a missile-based photo op. And they're calling this diplomacy. This isn't a negotiation. in the back seat. Airs out, he just pulled off the most brilliant geopolitical move in years. Here's what nobody saw coming. Venezuela just rolled out brand new oil. Companies get full access. An oil giant, Rosa Rubes Neft, spent decades building their Venezuela strategy, and now they're watching it all crumble. But wait, it gets even better. Remember Colombia's President Petro? 1 month ago, he called Trump's operation a kidnapping, threatened to take up arms. Fast forward to February 3rd, Petro walks into the White House, walks out wearing a MAGA hat, calling Trump terrific. Went from sworn enemy to, quote, not the best of friends. Meanwhile, Cuba's still playing tough guy. No Venezuelan oil, fuel imports drying up, daily blackouts, economy collapsing. The UN just warned Cuba faces humanitarian collapse. It's only a matter of time. Compare this to Russia. 3 years stuck in Ukraine, billions burned every month, and now they've lost their entire South American foothold. Trump took Venezuela in one night, while Russia can't take Kyiv in 3 years. Everyone thought Trump's Venezuela move was reckless. Turns out he just redrew the map of South America in 30 days. The United States and Mexico have just entered their most dangerous security standoff in years, creating new hotspots directly across from Texas and Arizona. Inside the U.S., officials say these groups are expanding their influence, pushing migration routes, controlling smuggling corridors, and pressuring territory dangerously close to the American border. And then comes the breaking moment. Mexico has publicly rejected any foreign intervention, a direct message to Washington. In response, U.S. lawmakers are debating whether to classify major cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, a move that could open the door to U.S. military action inside Mexico, something Mexico strongly opposes. Both nations say they don't want conflict, but both are preparing in case cooperation collapses. So here's the question. Should the U.S. take stronger action at the border, or would that push America and Mexico into an even bigger conflict? Russia just lost billions in Venezuela without firing a single shot. America one piece of paper Russia couldn't protect with 20 years of weapons. Venezuela was Putin's Venezuela. You can sell oil again. You can access US dollars. One condition, 0 deals with Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Choose them or survival. Venezuela chose survival. Their parliament purged Russian companies overnight. Here's the brutal part. Venezuela was armed with Russian weapons. S-300 air defense, Panzer missiles, Su-30 fighter jets. When U.S. forces flew into Caracas to extract Maduro, none of it fired. The S-300s weren't even operational. Communication systems failed. Russian weapons couldn't defend their own ally. Now Russia's foreign minister admits on TV, our companies are being openly kicked out. 20 years of investment, gone. Latin America foothold, lost. And Putin can't respond because he needs Trump's help with Ukraine. So he watches silently as America takes Venezuela back, seizes Russian assets, exposes their weapons as failures. Venezuela had a choice, keep Russia and starve, or take American money. They chose survival. In 24 hours, this was America showing controlling the dollar beats controlling weapons. Russia lost more with one document than 20 years of military deals could defend. Welcome to modern warfare. Iran just made the riskiest bet in modern history, and Trump's already calling it. Talks wrapped up in Oman. Iran's foreign minister came out saying, zero enrichment can never be accepted. For proxies, Iran said no across the board. But here's what nobody's watching. Hours before talks started, Iran deployed the Khorramshahr 4, one of their most advanced long-range missiles, at an underground Revolutionary Guards complex. And for the first time ever, America brought their top military commander to the table. Admiral Brad Cooper showed up in full dress uniform. The USS Abraham Lincoln sitting right off Iran's coast in the Arabian Sea. Satellite images show Iran's working overtime to access the Isfahan tunnel complex where enriched uranium might be stored. So here's Iran's calculation. They believe Trump doesn't want a costly, prolonged war, so their job is to make any conflict as chaotic as possible. Talks ended, U.S. rolled out new sanctions on Iranian oil and 14 vessels. Trump's tightening the economic noose, while the Abraham Lincoln sits in striking distance. Iran's betting everything he'll blink first. With Iran refusing to budge on the two things America demands most, the question isn't whether there'll be a deal. It's whether Iran just gambled its survival on reading Trump wrong.
San Diego, and San
Reclaiming my time, Director. Remembering your oath to tell the truth, did you ever tell Donald Trump his name is in the files?
I have never spoken to President Trump about the Epstein files.
Did you ever tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
The Attorney General and I have had numerous discussions about the entirety of the Epstein files and the reviews conducted by our team.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
And we have released where President Trump's name is in the
It's a simple
attorney's
question.
file.
Did you tell the Attorney General that the President's name is in the Epstein files?
During many conversations that the Attorney General and I have had on the matter of Epstein, we have reviewed.
The question is
painstakingly
simple.
Who
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out?
Yes or no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No, A, B, C,
Director,
D, E, F.
it sounds like you don't want to tell us. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files?
She essentially called them retarded.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support? I don't think that we should means there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinkos, there's no Office Max.
You just take a picture with your phone, you send it in on the website. Is this 1993?
People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID
A fax
laws,
machine?
be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
Guys, it's impossible to get an ID.
In Chicago's 1893 World Columbian artisans and immigrant laborers whose contributions were downplayed in the official narrative. Secret diaries and ledgers show a hidden network moving exhibits under precarious contracts and constant surveillance. This episode challenges the triumphalist view and honors unseen hands that shaped a pivotal moment in public culture. The series will continue to probe forgotten threads of history, uncovering truths the past kept carefully hidden.
About this. This might actually be the biggest Super Bowl scandal ever. Now, we all know that everyone bets player props in the Super Bowl, right? And tonight, one of those props was Sam in the third quarter. Every single person who bet the over tonight thought they were good. Bro rushed for 11 yards on the play. So now you're 6 full yards in the clear. You could basically just relax because you won this, right? Well, now we fast forward to just over 2 minutes left in the game, and Darnold still has 11 rushing yards. And as you can see, this game is a beatdown. Considering how much time's left, there is no reason for them to do anything but hand the ball off to their running back. What? Now take another look, because literally the only thing this man can't do is attempt to run the ball and lose 6 or more yards on the play. And instead of handing the ball off to his running back like he's supposed to do, he instead somehow forgets to do that. And then instead of trying to pick up as many yards as he can on the play, he runs backwards and slides down. You guessed it, exactly 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You end up losing by just a half yard on the most suspicious.
Certified boogie man, I'm the one that up to score with him. Walking down whole time, I know it. He got some hoe in him, pull on him, extort shit, really the flow on him. Say Drake, I hear you like a black one. To any bitch that talk to him and they in love, just make sure you hide your little sister from him. They tell me Chubb's the only one that get your.
Here's the last 24 hours in geopolitics. The United States has accused China of conducting a secret nuclear test in 2020 and conceal it, called false narratives, and said it acts responsibly on nuclear issues. Syria and Saudi Arabia signed multi-billion-dollar investment agreements across aviation, telecommunications, energy and real estate, including a Saudi-backed fund committing $2 billion to develop 2 airports in Aleppo and plans for a joint airline and connectivity project. Authorities in Italy say suspect corruption as the Winter Olympics began, with police investigating 3 connected incidents and no group claiming responsibility. Saudi Arabia condemned attacks by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces in North and South Kordofan and blamed unspecified foreign actors for supplying military equipment, mercenaries and fighters that are fueling the conflict. Japan's conservative ruling coalition led by Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi secured a landslide election victory projected to win up to 328 of 465 lower house seats and achieve a two-thirds supermajority, strengthening its legislative power after losing its majority in 2024.
We have some major news right now. The unredacted Epstein files show that Donald Trump, part of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, redacted Epstein files that he was able to see because he's a member of Congress. He came out and confirmed that the Department of Justice redacted a section of a synopsis prepared by Epstein's lawyers. And while that synopsis said that Donald Trump said that Epstein wasn't a member of Mar-a-Lago, but was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, and that he was never kicked out. And these documents were from the 2009 period where Epstein was first under investigation. Now that's a problem for the president. Why? Well, because he previously said that back in 2003, 2004, he kicked Epstein out of the Mar-a-Lago club due to inappropriate relationships Epstein had with a spa worker at the Mar-a-Lago club. That was Donald Trump's quotes. That was what Donald Trump said. Well, we're now learning that the DOJ redacted a key part of a synopsis that would have undercut Donald Trump's prior claims. What else is redacted? Spread the word, follow for more.
So there are documents in the Epstein files that suggest that Epstein may have had ties to Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad. It's basically someone who's been planted on the inside who then feeds the FBI information. So it says, CHS remembered Dershowitz, and this is Alan Dershowitz, who's Epstein's attorney, tell the U.S. attorney at the time that Epstein belonged to both U.S. and allied intelligence services. Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him. Then there's a bunch of redacted material, and then we go to CHS became convinced that Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent, see previous reporting. And then this is the file number if you want to take a look. Then I found this email from the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, who is emailing Epstein to try to meet up in London, to which Epstein randomly responds, you should make clear that I don't work. Barak says you or I, and then Epstein says that I don't, smiley face. And of course, the idea that Epstein was former Mossad has been a conspiracy theory for a really long time, and these documents do not prove that. But what we do know from this drop is that the FBI informant was right and that the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Epstein were really, really close. This file drop even has 3-hour audio in which Barak is talking to Epstein about how the growing population of Arabs in Israel is a problem. This is a direct quote. I think with a much more open mind about turning Jews, so that's converting people to Judaism, we can easily absorb another million. I have to tell Putin always, what we need is not just 1 more million, we need dramatically the million Russians. Maybe young, handsome girls will come. So this conversation is literally about bringing European white Jews to Israel to dilute the Arab population. So if anything, it's just obvious that Epstein had really close ties to powerful figures in Israel and around the world. We, the News Girls, will continue to cover this tomorrow on our YouTube, so make sure to tune in and follow to stay in the loop.
Netflix's attempt to acquire Warner Brothers for over $80 billion is now under major U.S. antitrust scrutiny. Monetized game. Regulators are asking tough questions, not just about the merger itself, but whether Netflix's market conduct undermines competition. Rival bidders and industry groups warn consolidation could hurt theaters, creators, and choice. Financial markets are jittery, pricing in regulatory risk and shifting valuations across streaming rivals. And as global regulators weigh in, this antitrust fight could set the tone for future media and tech mergers worldwide. Stay ahead of AI's market impact. Subscribe for insights from the Elites Review.
Founder is organizing a march for billionaires in California. Derek Kaufman, an AI startup founder, is on billionaires. He argues it would severely damage the tech economy and startup growth. This highlights the intense debate over wealth taxes, even though the governor has indicated he would veto the bill. It's a bold statement from the tech world. Follow for news in under 60 seconds.
This kid just stole all of the U.S. government's Bitcoin because his dad was in charge of holding it. He's an online hackers and Bitcoin stolen, but no one knew how it was done until now. It turns out the US Marshals contracted out another company to hold the Bitcoin for them. This company advertises different things that they do, including electronic security. And wouldn't you know, the CEO's son is this kid right here. That's right, John's dad owns Command Services and Support, which currently has an active IT government contract. And John Lick was caught because he got in an argument with another hacker. The hacker called him broke and he said, well, I'll go band for band. And in doing so, exposed himself to the particular address where the stolen funds were sent to first. This John Lick kid's probably going to be in a movie.
I think someone said that Trump's name is in the Epstein files more than Jesus's. At this point, but screaming with rage.
Satanic Seminar could have planned the winter 2026 Olympics. We have people that are saying this. Look, guys, that's a pentagram. How about that?
I'm having trouble trying to sleep.
Do you know the history of Palm Beach? No. They created it. It was like a sandbar that they built up. And then they hired a bunch of black people to come on the island and build all the houses. They finished it. And then the island held a big party to celebrate. And then they torched all their houses.
They torched their houses?
The houses.
After they were done building the mansion?
Yes.
While they were celebrating, their homes on the island burned down mysteriously, forced them out of there and took the land.
And it's the wealthiest piece of real estate in the country right now. This was part of the playbook.
That's so.
How are these people real? There is an anywhere near the United States, and they're having a protest against ICE. Why would ICE go there?
Trump and the state of Israel. The supposed grieving. So here's some facts about her that I think the public has a right to know and that nobody else is reporting on. Around 2009 to 2010, even though Erica had never modeled before or participated in a beauty pageant, she received an invitation in the mail to participate in the Miss USA beauty pageants, which were owned by Donald Trump. In 2012, she won the Miss Arizona competition. And at the same time, according to her website, she was also a casting director at the same time she was modeling for Trump. In 2006, she started a ministry when she was just 17 years old. This ministry was working with the US military in Romania at the same time she claimed to be working as a casting director. The area in Romania where Erica was operating her ministry out of had a ton of locals accusing these evangelical ministries of kidnapping children and trafficking them out of the country. These children were being found in Israel, the UK, and undisclosed private islands. The locals demanded that the authorities look into this, and shocker, they never did, but her ministry was kicked out of Romania. In 2018, 2 years after Donald Trump started working with Charlie Kirk, Erica and Charlie were introduced to one another after one of their mutual friends suggested that Charlie should hire. So at Erica's job interview with Charlie, Erica allegedly said, "You're not going to be my boss. You're going to be my boyfriend." So they began dating. I think it's safe to assume that this mutual friend was Donald Trump because Erica was already one of his employees. So it would make sense for his team to encourage this. Beauty pageants are a well-known gateway for human trafficking. So with her being a casting director, her ministry working with the military in Romania and being asked to leave, along with her very strange behavior of capitalizing on the death of her husband, I think this should be of immense concern to us all. Random people do not get propped up by the mainstream media out of nowhere. That includes Charlie Kirk, whose father had deep connections to Donald Trump even before he started working with Charlie Kirk. All of these people that you see on TV run in the same circles, and anybody with ties to human trafficking should not be trusted. So comment below and let me know, did you know about her ties to Trump and the beauty pageants and this ministry that she operated in Romania? Let's chat about this.
We have a massive smoking gun, a press release ready to
one more few for the residents of Chicago. We need as many independent voices as possible, and that's why what you guys do is so fucking important.
covering what the corporate media covers up. Hey, it's Jordan with Status Quo. We have a major, massive smoking gun that seems to debunk once and for all the Jeffrey Epstein suicide, which I have been stating for at least a year or two. It's clearly not a suicide. Evidence has now come out from the Epstein files that the Trump administration, apparently its subsidiary in the Southern District of New York, had a press release ready to go about Epstein's death a day before he was found dead. This is a statement from Manhattan's U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York, which is part of the Justice Department, dated August 9th. Only minor detail. He was dead, found dead the day after, on August 10th. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman said earlier this morning the Manhattan Correctional Center confirmed that Jeffrey Epstein, who faced charges brought by this office of engaging in the sex trafficking of minors, had been found unresponsive in his cell and pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Now, here is the actual statement that went out on the 10th by the same office. Notice a little difference. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman said earlier this morning, the Manhattan Correctional Center confirmed that Jeffrey Epstein, who faced charges brought by this office of engaging in the sex trafficking of minors, had been found unresponsive in his cell. So here we have an apparent suicide was added, was not in the original pre-suicide statement that was at least drafted the day before. In the Twilight Zone, or should this be leading every newscast in America? Should be all over the place. How do you explain this? Oopsies, we just got the date wrong. It gets even worse. Apparently, through the files, the prison, which I don't think would have done this on their own, you'd think they might have had a little coercing from government officials to fool the media, created like a fake Hearst with Jeffrey Epstein's like a fake body to fool the media and get the media off the scent as they pulled Epstein's real body out of the prison. We're with Epstein's body and had secured the scene. Redacted remained with correctional officers and until personnel from the Office of Chief Medical Examiner arrived to transport Epstein to their facility. Due to the large news media presence outside the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a male OCME official called and said he would be arriving at the loading deck with a black vehicle. In order to thwart the media, redacted, used boxes and sheets to create what appeared to be a human body, which was put into the white OCME vehicle, which the press followed, allowing the black vehicle to depart unnoticed with Epstein's body. Is this like a bad movie? This sounds like a movie, like a screwball comedy or something, although it's not funny at all. They created a fake Hearst with sheets over boxes to thwart the media. Why would you need to thwart the media if there was no issue? And before people get really conspiratorial, I'm not saying, Epstein's alive on some island. I know a lot of people think that. That's not what I'm saying. But they had a pre-death statement of his suicide, although that statement on August 9th didn't say suicide. Then they have a fake Hearst, And need I not remind you, I reported on this last week, apparently there was no actual noose found on Jeffrey Epstein after he supposedly hung himself from CBS News. Thomas told investigators, this is one of the prison correctional officers, Thomas told investigators he discovered Epstein in his cell shortly after 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, and that he, quote, ripped Epstein down from the hanging position. Investigators asked what happened to the noose. I don't recall taking the noose off. I really don't, he replied. I don't recall taking the thing from around his neck. Noel, who remained standing in the cell entrance, that's another prison guard, told investigators she saw Thomas lower Epstein to the floor, but did not see a noose around his neck. The noose Epstein allegedly used has never been definitively identified, according to the Inspector General's report. A noose collected at the scene was later determined not to be the ligature used in Epstein's death. I don't know if I was collecting a dead body off from the ceiling. I'm pretty sure I'd remember if there was a noose around his neck. Found at the scene. Again, found at the scene, like a hanger, a coat hanger, was not found to be the ligature that killed him. And need I remind you, sorry if folks are seeing this again, but for folks who haven't seen it, pretty important. I mean, one of the world's most renowned forensic pathologists, he had an HBO show, Dr. Michael Baden. It was called Autopsy. He was asked by the family to observe the autopsy. This is what he said about Epstein's death.
I was asked by the brother, the next of kin, to be at the autopsy. And at the autopsy on day one, there were findings with ligature homicidal strangulation, which included...
And it was suggested at the time that he committed suicide by doing what?
By hanging. At the time he was found allegedly hanging by a homemade ligature of sheets.
Are you saying you don't think it was suicide?
I think that the evidence points toward homicide rather than suicide.
Why?
Because there are multiple 3 fractures in the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, that are very unusual for suicide and more indicative of strangulation, homicidal strangulation.
More indicative of homicidal strangulation. Now, why does all this matter? I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was a deadbeat. I'm not talking about this in terms of mourning his death. He was a child predator. But clearly, as these files are coming out, and we don't have all the files, and a lot of the files have been heavily redacted, not to protect the women, to protect the other child predators who happen to be billionaires and some of the worst oligarchs in the world. But clearly, Epstein had a global black powers, athletes, you name it. So it's a long list of people who would want him harmed, all the way up to potentially the president of the United States, who, oh, by the way, Epstein's brother, Mark, gave a tip, submitted a tip to the FBI in 2023. He said, Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in his jail cell. I have reason to believe he was killed because he was about to name names. I believe President Trump authorized his murder. Now, I want to be clear. We're not at that point where we have evidence, but we now have evidence. The Southern District of New York, which is the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, represents the federal government. That is a prosecutor representing the federal government, i.e. the Department of Justice. At that time, the Trump's first administration. We have evidence that the Trump had a press statement ready to go before he died. Before he says he thinks Trump might have ordered a hit. And by the way, Mark has testified previously. Jeffrey Epstein's brother said Epstein knew stuff about Trump that would require him to cancel the election. And if you read the actual testimony here, there's a lot of very strange, indiscernible notations also. Typically, the court reporter will make you repeat yourself to get a clean record. Wild stuff. Let me show you what he's talking about. Here's Mark Epstein testifying. Yeah, that's not cut. It's kind of indiscernible. And it's not, it's pretty standard sizes, I believe. And this would be discolored from the secretions of his neck. Thing I will also tell you is that in the 2016 election, my brother didn't tell me why indiscernible. What he told me is he said what he knew about indiscernible Trump, because they would have to cancel the election. My brother is also indiscernible. He worked with Steve Bannon, who has 16 hours of videotape. I know this because my brother said he worked with him. And on that day, he said he stopped hanging out with Trump when he realized indiscernible. In the papers, they're reading he stopped hanging out with Trump and like he fell apart. Indiscernible. It was bullshit. Everybody was like, he stopped hanging out with Trump when he realized Trump was a dick. That's exactly what he said. I can tell you from covering other court cases, those court reporters, they stop you a lot if they can't understand what you're saying. So I don't know why his testimony had so many indiscernibles, which means we can't ascertain what he said. Mark also said that he asked the Justice Department for missing videotape from Epstein's cell, and he was strung along and then told, we can't give it to you.
Now, I asked to get the footage from that same camera under Freedom of Information Act from 10 o'clock the night before until noon the following morning. That would show who locked up the tier, who were the last people on that tier. And in the morning, it would show, Michael Thomas going in the garden and finding the body, and it would show what the situation was when they removed the body from the tier. I was initially told I couldn't get that footage because it was still an open investigation. Okay, I understand that. But then when the investigation was over, I asked for that footage again, okay? And I was now told that the cameras that were operating don't show that area.
That's right.
I have this in writing from the Bureau of Prisons.
I think it's pretty damn relevant now that it seems clear this man didn't kill himself. As I've reported also, there was the prison psychologist who spoke with him a month before, weeks before. No evidence he was suicidal. Honestly, he was fairly arrogant, thinking and excited. He got his bail hearing coming up. He thought he was going to get out on bail by posting, the most amount of money in history for bail. New report indicates that his lawyers were beginning to explore potentially cooperating with prosecutors. Well, do we think possibly some people who might be the victims of that cooperation might have caught wind of that? It's not unheard of to kind of hire a hitman inside the prison to take out someone who could do damage. You've seen mob movies. And now we have the new shocking, scandalous information that, the Trump Office of Inspector General just left out of their report that there was an orange-looking figure found at 10:39 p.m. the night before Epstein's suicide.
A new analysis of surveillance video by CBS News shows a partial view of what may be someone possibly headed up to Epstein's cell tier the night he died. Notorious sex offender Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell in the early morning of August 10, 2019, inside this since-shuttered federal prison in Manhattan. And this was the vow of then Attorney General Bill Barr.
We will get to the bottom of what happened, and there will be accountability.
Epstein's death was quickly ruled a suicide, but a technical failure that left only one working camera near his cell that night has created conspiracy theories about what happened leading up to his death. At the time, the Attorney General said no one entered Epstein's housing tier the night of his death. But there's been scrutiny of a particular moment on the cell block surveillance footage where an orange-looking flash could be seen at 10:39 p.m. A report from the Justice Department Inspector General notes the flash, quote, "It is possible someone is carrying inmate linen or bedding up the stairs." And the final report refers to it as, quote, "an unidentified corrections officer." But now, newly released Justice Department documents reveal an initial FBI review of surveillance video on the cell block says the flash could possibly be an inmate. And independent video analysts consulted by CBS News say the movement was more consistent with an inmate or someone wearing an orange prison uniform than a corrections officer. And prison employees tell CBS News it would have been highly unusual to move an inmate at 10:39 p.m. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead at 6:30 a.m. the following morning. And last year, then Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino insisted
there's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
Clear as day. I don't know about you folks. Obviously, there's a hole right now. We are now on the ground for over 2 months. We're still there in Minneapolis covering this ICE terror campaign. So I'm not saying drop everything and only focus on this, but I would say this needs to move to the top of the list. We need to know what really happened, how this guy died, who killed him, who knew what when, and why they killed him, because it's directly linked to this entire cover-up. The victims deserve transparency, as do the American public. And frankly, Pam Bondi, Trump, all these people that have been involved deserve to be put on trial for obstruction of justice and more. Because the more that comes out, it's not only that it appears they might have been involved in his death, it appears there was a cover-up after that.
We have some significant developments this afternoon. Donald Trump, the president, Trump lied. Now, it's not surprising that the president would lie about his relationship about Jeffrey Epstein, given the fact that the two of them were close at periods of times, and he wouldn't want to be associated with this horrific, evil individual. But the fact that the president is lying and that his lies are covered up by these redactions, well, that speaks volumes. And well, today, Jamie Raskin became the first member of Congress to go and review these files. He's the leading Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. He's going to be leading the effort to question Attorney General Pam Bondi on Wednesday. And what he found completely undercuts one of Donald Trump's critical claims as it relates to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and whether or not Trump actually kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. Everyone needs to see this, so make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The more you like, the more people see this. Subscribe to support my work. On my Substack, click the link below. Today's the 1-year anniversary of doing journalism full-time, and your support really helps fuel this. I honestly am just so grateful to have your support because making that decision was one of the hardest and scariest of my life. So let's just jump right into it. I want you to listen to what Congressman Raskin had to say about Donald Trump allegedly kicking Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, because that's what he previously claimed. Take a listen to what Raskin had to say after reviewing the files.
The period of the 2009 investigation. And Epstein's lawyers synopsized and quoted Trump as saying that that Jeffrey Epstein was not a member of his club at Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, and he had never been asked to leave. And that was redacted for some indeterminate, inscrutable reason. I know it seems to be at odds with some things that President Trump has been saying recently about how he had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club or asked him to leave. And this was at least one report that appears to contradict it.
So what Raskin is describing is a document that was prepared by Epstein's lawyers. And in this document is a synopsis of essentially what Donald Trump had to say. This document was prepared 2008, 2009. That was when Jeffrey Epstein was facing the first criminal allegations against him that were officially charged, right? And apparently, according to Raskin, one of the statements in that document essentially was quoting Donald Trump, in which he said that Epstein wasn't a member of Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest and he was never actually kicked out of the club. Now, that is significant. Why? Because it contradicts Donald Trump's prior statements. We learned, according to the Wall Street Journal, that allegedly Jeffrey Epstein was banned from Donald Trump's spa in 2003 after an 18-year-old employee complained to managers that the pedophile pressured her for sex. So that in 2003 allegedly was banned. Trump previously said that he was not a fan of Jeffrey Epstein's In 2009, he said he had not spoken to Jeffrey Epstein in 15 years. That would mean he had not spoken with Epstein since 2004. But what Raskin is saying is that not only did the first thing really not happen, Epstein was never banned or kicked out of Mar-a-Lago based on what Epstein's lawyers, but also it seems as though Trump's lawyers were communicating with Jeffrey Epstein as recently as 2009 when they were discussing the so that is significant. And while it's a lie, right, on its own, to me, what's significant about that is that it was redacted. Why was that statement redacted? There was no reason for that statement to be redacted. And it raises the question, what else is redacted that we don't know about? Well, here's what else is redacted. After reviewing Epstein documents at the Department of Justice, Jamie Raskin said that there is evidence of victims as young as 9 years old. As young as 9 years old. I mean, that is horrific. Horrific to say the least. And well, he also was asked about whether or not Bill Clinton's name was redacted. Take a listen to what Raskin had to say.
What did you see specific to President Trump or President Clinton, and were there specific redactions to them?
Well, I just gave an example of one redaction related to President Trump. I did not see any redactions related to President Clinton.
So you saw no redactions as it related to President Clinton. Okay. All these redactions according to about Trump, but not Clinton. I do want you to hear what he had to say about redactions regarding survivors. Take a listen.
All of the information to come out, and the only redactions should be the names of the victims and the identifying information. Unfortunately, they violated that precept by releasing the names of a lot of victims, which is either spectacular incompetence and sloppiness on their part, or, as a lot of the survivors believe, a deliberate threat to other survivors who are thinking about coming forward, that they need to be careful because they can be exposed and have their personal information dragged through the mud as well.
A deliberate threat. And well, look, this is kind of the stuff that's redacted, right? I mean, we've seen all these redaction failures. This is a document that was found from interrogatories. Interrogatories are legal questions asked in a lawsuit. The lawsuit was a survivor suing Jeffrey Epstein. And one of the questions that was asked is list out, and this is normal in a lawsuit. Okay? And well, this is the answer to that question. And on the right, you see, quote, knowledge of finances and defense sexual desire for minor girls. Donald Trump being one of the names, Mark Epstein, Jean-Luc Brunel, David Copperfield, Maxwell, okay? The third line is Les Wexner. Not sure why they redacted just the first name and not the full name. Doesn't make any sense. The first line is redacted and the last line is redacted. Why? No one knows. So it's things like this that shouldn't be redacted and yet are. And while Melanie Stansbury, a congresswoman on Capitol Hill after the Ghislaine Maxwell short deposition today, really kind of put this all into perspective. Take a listen.
Know that there are more than 36 associates, family members, and individuals directly associated with Donald Trump named in those files. Now, there are now at least 9 or 10 other countries across the world that have opened investigations or forced their leaders to step down because of their mere association with Jeffrey Epstein. And the United States government is engaged in an active cover-up of the largest sex trafficking scandal and influence peddling scandal in the history of the United States. And Donald Trump is right at the center of it. And the person to provide the evidence who knows what is going on is trying to invoke the Fifth to buy her clemency.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's kind of the truth. And that's where we're at. And while more members of Congress are going to be digging into these, quote, unredacted files in the coming days, but remember, there are 3 million of them. One person can't review 3 million redacted documents. We'll keep pushing. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. More updates coming soon. Hey folks, thanks so much for watching. Feel free to add this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you watch for the latest breaking news and daily hits throughout the day. Make sure to follow, subscribe. See you soon for more.
Hello, I am back in the studio. We are if you're new here, because I did gain a bunch of subscribers over that vacation break. This is what it normally looks like. This is normally where we hang out. So please do get comfortable because he uncovered fraud. Somali immigrants committing fraud in Minneapolis, and the video that he has posted has gotten 130 million views on Twitter or X, whatever we call it now. And I don't know how many of those are real views, because 130 million people, that's a lie. Like maybe 30 million would be believable, but I don't know. You probably haven't even heard of this. And if you haven't, then how could it be 130 million people have watched it? Regardless, it has taken the media by storm. It's gotten more than 2.5 million views on YouTube. And the problem with this video, among a lot of things, is that it uncovers nothing. It's a big freaking lie. The fraud that he thinks he's uncovered has actually been discovered years ago. Tim Walz and the Justice Department have already been investigating this, but here's just a bit of what this gentleman was doing.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on?
I mean, they're just harassing people. Tim Walz responded to this and said, "We spent years cracking down on fraud, referring cases to law enforcement, shutting down and auditing high-risk programs. Trump keeps letting fraudsters out of prison. The national news just now paying attention. Here's what we've done to stop it." And he posted a long statement here, but the summary is they've repeaters and people have gone to jail, and more to do. Of course, there's more to do, but this is not the solution. And what Republicans have done now is, because of these made up lies by a random YouTuber, they are now freezing childcare funds to everyone in Minnesota. Now, as Governor Walz said there, and I'm going to take you through this in just a minute, there has been multiple times where this current administration and Donald Trump specifically have stopped people who have committed fraud from getting justice. First, this man, Nick Shirley, he's not a bright kid. This is not a bright individual, not smart. CNN confronted him in Minnesota, and they asked him if he went to these child daycare centers that he alleged were committing fraud during normal business hours. And here's what he said.
Did you come during their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came the following day later in the day. The point of it is not whether or not I came at the right time of their operation hours. The point is that blacked out doors, they can't give you any information. You call that number, no one answers. I wasn't trying to go inside, and there should be a way for somebody to actually be able to call that number and somebody be able to answer. These aren't real businesses.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a
There
daycare.
should be a reception.
No, every daycare is locked.
Their doors are locked.
And so, okay, you bring up a fair point. Then why can't they actually give me information how to enroll a...
Did you come?
Well, there should be that we should be able to see inside the daycare. Why can't we visit the daycare? Why won't they let to see? It's absurd. It is absolutely absurd. And now, as I said, it's been proven that this man is just a lying fraud. And here's just one report.
This is ABC Learning Center in Minneapolis.
ABC
Spotlight.
We've arrived to ABC Learning Center.
In a now viral video, right-wing YouTuber Nick Shirley claims nearly a dozen daycare centers in Minnesota are taking public funds but not providing a service. He says ABC Learning Center is one of them, knocking on the door in mid-December.
I would like to check a child in the daycare.
Hassan says his employee didn't respond because Shirley was in a group of about 8 people, and his staff were concerned about recent ICE activity.
Is this daycare committing fraud?
No, we're not committing fraud.
Hassan showed us security footage from the same day Shirley was here. According to the timestamps in the videos, this woman takes a young child into the center at around 9 a.m. that day, about 3 hours before Shirley arrives at the door closer to the street. Within the hour after Shirley leaves, a woman arrives at the other door with a stroller. A larger family heads inside a few hours later. Tuesday afternoon, WCCO found at least a dozen children at ABC Learning Center, which is licensed with the state. Records show Minnesota officials last visited the daycare in November.
So the daycare center he went to that said is committing fraud, had children, is registered with the state, and at the time this local news outlet went there, had children there as well. Where's the fraud? Where's the fraud? I will tell you where the fraud is. Meet Michelle Fiore, a former GOP in Nevada who raised funds to create a memorial to honor fallen on cosmetic surgery and other personal items. She was convicted in 2024 and Trump pardoned her before her sentence. She's not Somalian. She is a fraudster, and Donald Trump pardoned her. Do you see where this is going to be going? Meet the Shirleys. They were pardoned after convicted of 12 counts of bank fraud and tax evasion. They don't have to pay back the $17.8 million in restitution or serve 12 years in sentence. They are fraudsters. They are not Somalis. Meet Philip S. Formes. Trump commuted the sentence of a convicted healthcare fraudster who was serving 20 years for a $1.3 billion Medicare fraud scheme, one of the largest in U.S. history. That person has since been arrested again on new criminal charges. Will Trump pardon him? He's a fraudster. He's not Somali. Say hello to Trevor Milton. He doesn't look Somali to me. Well, he donated $1.8 million to Trump and hired Pam Bondi's brother as his pardon attorney. He defrauded hundreds of millions of people and he walked away free. Is Donald Trump the one allowing fraud to go unchecked? And look at this. Brett Favre. He was involved in stealing $17 million of money to build a volleyball stadium in GOP-ruled Mississippi. Not Somali. He was, however, forced to pay back $1.1 million. Would you take that deal? You get $77 million. All you got to do is pay $1.1 million back. I'd take that deal. Now, Eric Trump said people better start going to jail in Minnesota. Well, you need to shut the fuck up, bitch, because you and your family actually committed fraud against St. Jude's Children's Hospital. In 2017, it was discovered that you and your family took donations that were meant for children's cancer. And that led to you having to give $2 million back. Still, you remain in power. But the only ones who've committed fraud in this situation is you and your goddamn disgusting family. Trump also pardoned Paul Walzak after his mother attended a $1 million dinner. $47 million fraud case was dropped by Trump after Weidenhorn made huge donations to his campaign and inaugural fund. Donald Trump had to pay $25 million because he fraudulently created a university. The only people committing fraud here are folks on the right, Donald Trump, and the people who support this grift. It's not Somalis. It's not normal Americans. It's the richest among us who are the most connected, who are committing fraud, who are making money doing it, and are getting away with it with the help of the President of the United States. I think maybe we should be mad about that.
It causes mass outrage in the United States. Boy, has it. Israel claims money going to terrorism. And so you see how they're all working together? So we've all heard about the Somali daycare scandal that's happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's happening in Minnesota. Right now, I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to tell you how this ties into that scandal. You ready? So it's a big scandal, billions of dollars being funneled to Somali daycares and all, and billions, right? And all of a sudden we're just hearing about it now. What? Well, guess what? Let's remember this.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later.
So this is right after 9/11. This is General Wesley Clark talking to people at the Pentagon right after 9/11. And guess what they told him?
And by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
He said Somalia. What? What? Somalia? Why would we be going into Somalia? What the heck is that about? Okay, so here's a guy. This is Madi Shoshani, and he's the host of TBN Israel. And here's what he's going to tell you that you don't know about this Somali daycare scam. Here we go.
How is the Israeli Mossad related to the recent corruption that was discovered in Minnesota? You're not going to believe it, but there actually is a substantial connection, and it runs through the Israeli Prime Minister office. I'll start from the end. Israel just established relationships with Somaliland, which is not Somalia. But the backstory to the whole Minnesota corruption story is that much of those funds, and again, I think the initial number that came out is about $9 billion. Again, this is crazy. American taxpayer money of, let's say, $15 billion that they imagine were stolen or misdiverted from public funds. About $9 billion of those were sent back to support terrorism, or what they would call the Muslim Brotherhood actions, and this is tied into Qatar. And Israel, of course, was behind the scenes, and I know people love these conspiracies, in leaking some of the information that is responsible or related to the funding of terrorism using that exact money. So the fact that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has a phone call and recognizes Somaliland is tied into Qatar being a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, tied into the Somali funds that were stolen in Minnesota funding terrorism in the Middle East. That is a story that came out right now. It really blows my mind how global terrorism works, but it's such an amazing, and I'm sure there's more news to come on this topic.
Okay, so here's where Gen X girl comes in. She says the timing, who benefits from amplifying a scandal now that was uncovered back in 2020? Because it was. Isn't that weird? So, and she links to this. She says, so how beneficial do you think it is for Americans to be outraged at Somalis right now when Israel wants the U.S. government to support its effort to break up Somalia into 2 countries where Israel has a military base and is really in the Israel-backed portion of Somalia, which is called Somaliland? Wait, what? Yeah. So there's a big idea that they want to send the Palestinians to Somalia, but not the Somalia, but the Somaliland, which, by the way, they've been talking about Somaliland, who has the Zionist for 80 years. This is not a new thing. So here, notice how quiet suddenly it got about that huge Epstein drop that's getting dipped wholesale into a vat of black ink as we speak. Gen X, 100%. So they're about to pull out more distractions than a magician at a child's birthday party. So Israel says Mossad was behind the Somali fraud story. Really? causes mass outrage in the United States. Boy, has it. Israel claims money going to terrorism. Israel claims Qatar is behind it. Israel built military site in Somaliland. Israel recognized Somaliland, breaking Somalia into two rival. So that just happened where Israel recognized Somaliland. Isn't that something? Israel built advanced military facilities in Somalia. No, in Somaliland. Satellite images reveal that Israel built an advanced military facility at the Berbera Airport in Somaliland. The United Arab Emirates has developed a strong military presence at this airport since 2017. So do you see how they're all working together? Just like ISIS and Al-Qaeda is working with the Mossad, Israel, and the CIA. Just like Benjamin Netanyahu begged Qatar to fund Hamas. Do you see how they're all working together? They have military bases in the same Somaliland, Qatar, and Israel. What? So do you see this game that's happening now? I hope you do. Elastian says, if you said this before, you'd have been called anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist. Israel media, Mossad has been involved in paving the way for breakaway Somaliland for years. Behind Israel's recognition of Somaliland, years of quiet Mossad involvement. Israel becomes the first UN member to recognize Somaliland as a sovereign state, drawing condemnation from Somalia, from Turkey, and Egypt. The move reflects strategic interests near Houthi-controlled areas and years of quiet Mossad engagement. Really? No kidding. And by the way, when Israel recognizes you, how they are recognizing Somaliland, when they recognize you, like when a mountain lion sees you, it just means that they're coming for you next. That's what that means. So here, Mark Dubowitz says, for those mocking why Israel would engage Somaliland sits on the Gulf of Aden next to the Bab el-Mandeb, a choke point for global trade and energy. Across the water are Iran-backed Houthis firing on Israel and shipping. Somaliland offers stability, it offers ports, intelligence access, and a non-Iranian platform on the Red Sea. Similar reasons why the U.S. has a military base in Djibouti. Really? Okay. There it is. Somaliland. There's Yemen. Those are the people who were bombing Israeli boats because Israel's committing a genocide against the Palestinians. So the people in Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen, are doing what the rest of the world should be doing, sanctioning Israel over a genocide it's committing. But they're not. Of course they're not. Of course they're not. So there it is. Somaliland is Israel's 80-year-old project. The project was called Harar Council. The 34-page documents on his link tree, linked in bio. So what does this say? Here, I'll just read a little bit to you. My proposal is to unite the so-called Harar territory of Ethiopia with parts of the British Somaliland and create there a state for the European Jews. This territory is large enough. It would be easy to devote 60,000 to 70,000 square miles there for this purpose. This territory is inhabited by a small agricultural population who are not likely to raise great difficulties, unlike the Palestinians. Nevertheless, it will be necessary to remember the lessons learned by the Palestine experience, namely to prevent the territory being overrun by people from other parts of Ethiopia and to keep out foreign agitators, like Palestinians. There were the foreign agitators in Palestine. The climate on the plateau is absolutely healthy and suitable for Europeans. Those parts of the Somali coast which have a bad climate could be improved in measurable time by irrigation. The Harar, so there you go. Politically, these territories belong, as already stated, to Great Britain. and the Empire of Ethiopia. In July of 1935, the British government proposed to the Emperor of Ethiopia that the port of Zilia and certain other parts of the British Somaliland be ceded to him if he were prepared to make certain concessions to Italy. It is therefore not impossible that the British government may today be ready to cede a rather larger portion of Somaliland together with the port of Berbera to the European Jewish state we have in mind. So it was already not going well for Israel and Palestine in 1935, and they were looking to go to Somaliland. Well, now it seems like they're looking to send all the Palestinians to Somaliland, where they already have military bases and Qatar. That's what it kind of looks like. That's all I'm saying. It kind of looks that way. And the Somali fraud story will blaze all the headlines and obscure the entire narrative of resettling the Palestinians to Somalia. This is the magician's trick, twirling around while a magician sets up the trick. This is the magician's assistant twirling around while a magician sets up the trick. It's all smoke and mirrors, and it's so glaringly obvious. There it is. There it is. Gen X girl goes on, everyone's outraged over the Somalia scam, understandably, but where is the outrage over Trump's pardons of wealthy criminals who scammed billions from Medicare? So we've already covered this. No one cared about this. People stole billions of dollars from Medicare. Trump pardoned them. Why? Well, one of them was at the behest of Israel for sure. This one here, Philip S. Teformes. He bilked $1.3 billion from Medicaid. He got a full pardon from Trump. So now we're supposed to care about $9 billion. Everybody's outraged, and rightly so. But nobody was upset that Trump pardoned a guy who stole $1.3 billion from Medicaid and Medicare. No one cared about that, but everybody cares about the $9 billion in Minnesota. It's weird that no one cares about this. There's another guy, $1.7 billion. There's another guy, 4.3 billion. HDR Global, 100 million, 1.2. So there you go. So there you go. So now you know a little bit more about the story. Do you really think that this just broke now? That they didn't know about this? Project Veritas, I'm pretty sure, broke this story in 2020 about the daycare centers in Minnesota. Joe Biden's Justice Department was investigating it. I think they might have even prosecuted some people. Don't hold me to that. But so now you know the rest of the story. Well, here's what this guy has to say.
About the Somali fraud in Minnesota, USA, I really think people need to start seeing the bigger picture here. Do you really believe that some Somali people living there in Minneapolis could get away with defrauding the state for, say, $9-10 billion a year?
No. My answer would be no. I don't think they could be doing that without help from the deep state.
Of course not. Washington, D.C. is totally involved in this and not only allowed it to happen, but made it happen. So that's because Israel recently recognized Somaliland, part of Somalia, an independent state. Why would Israel do so? Well, they need a place to deport the Palestinians to. But you don't just get a piece, you have to pay for it. And that's what this is. The U.S. is the greatest ally of Israel. Remember, the United States citizens, middle-class people, taxpayers are going to pay for that. This whole scam, the Somali care system scam, whatever, to me looks like an annual payment where the U.S. taxpayer is now forced to pay $10 billion a year to the Somali elites, to Al-Shabaab, the terrorist organization, and so on, in exchange for a piece of land where Israel can then deport the Palestinians to. Your whole government is corrupt, okay? And this is just Somalia. Imagine what the USA is doing with India. Imagine how much money you're bleeding to India.
So that comes from this guy, Johannes M. Cohenbratt, and he wrote a Substack called "Is the FBI Investigating or Organizing the Somali Fraud?" Well, here's what he said. I find it hard to believe that Somalia could pull this off on their own where no one else could. How come Mexicans or Puerto Ricans never could do this? Are Somalis with their average IQ below 70 such law tech geniuses that only they could pull off such a massive fraud and apparently get away with it fairly undetected ever since Obama sent Somalis to Minnesota in 2014? At the same time, as I said, Israel recently became the first country worldwide to recognize Somaliland, a breakaway region of the northwest of Somalia, as a sovereign nation. This raised my suspicion. Why would Israel care to recognize some breakaway region as a sovereign nation? Well, for starters, Somaliland is close to the Gulf of Aden, the entry point into the Red Sea, which leads up to the Suez Canal. This Gulf is one of the crucial linchpins supplying the West with international trade coming out of India and China overseas. Apparently funded by the United Arab Emirates, Israel is already building military bases in Somaliland. The U.S. has bases in neighboring Djibouti. The location near the Gulf of Aden appears only extra crucial vis-a-vis the incessant attacks coming out of Yemen across the Gulf, where the Houthi rebels have been using Iranian or even Chinese-backed drone systems to attack the U.S. Navy's Israel's. The cheap rebel drones have been wreaking a ton of havoc and have also made the West lose some face, since its super advanced systems are no match against the primitive sticks and stones being thrown at it. But one does not simply acquire a piece of land the size of a country, not without war or without bribery. To secure Somaliland in the ever-complexifying geopolitical struggle for Western dominance, Israel and its greatest ally, the USA, if not Britain, would have to have offered the Somali elites something of value. And that's how I made the connection to the Somali fraud cases in Minnesota. Wait, did Obama really send Somalis to Minnesota in 2014? Yes, he did. The problem was neither the USA nor Israel could be seen bribing Somali elites to give up Somaliland. So I think the whole migration of people to Minnesota served as a payment scheme, perhaps a rental scheme. The people who would later commit massive fraud against U.S. authorities were being shipped in under Obama, but this doesn't let Trump off the hook. Trump, the narcissist, is more concerned about winning his Nobel Peace Prize, which Israel's Netanyahu personally promised him to get. Trump seems controlled by Israeli interests, you think? What I find hilarious, though, is that the U.S. ruling circles chose to do a fraud scheme to the benefit of terrorist organizations such as Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Why didn't they just give the Somali leaders some theme parks, landmarks, or skyscrapers? I guess that too much of U.S. real estate has already been promised to Arabs, Russians, and Chinese investors. They're running out of options to bribe foreign partners unless they start taking the money directly out of the social services coffers. Yes, in short, I believe the Somalis that Obama brought in were henchmen. And I believe these henchmen were given free rein by both Washington, D.C. and the FBI to commit fraud. And no, I don't think the FBI director, Kash Patel, is going to do anything about it because the FBI isn't investigating the fraud. The FBI is organizing it. So that's that guy's theory. No, I can't vouch for the veracity of his theory or any of these theories. But it certainly is interesting. There's definitely a connection between the fraud of Somalian people in Minnesota with Israel recognizing Somaliland and wanting to get the Palestinians to Somalia. There's definitely a connection there. There's definitely a connection there. Come see me on tour January 11th in Waikiki, February 20th in Lansing, Michigan, February 21st in Milwaukee. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.
Before we dive into this. First and foremost, everything for just a moment, because I'm going to show you something about this story that corporate media is not showing you, they're not discussing. When I see stories, I always try to ask myself a couple of questions. The first one, what is the source? What is the timing of the incident, the timing of the report? And then this one is also kind of a big one. What is the agenda? I want you to think about those three questions as we get into this story. So apparently in 2020, there was a report that some of the Somali daycare centers in Minnesota were fraudulently taking money from the government and not actually having either enough kids in those daycare centers or any kids in those daycare centers. This was reported back in 2020. And that was under Donald Trump's administration. He was still president at that time. So as we go into this story, I want you to ask yourself this question. Why is this story that was reported back in 2020, why is it a big deal and it's blasted all over the news and social media now? Let's get into this clip. Again, this is where I think you need to think about this question about the source. I think that's very important. Let's start with this clip here.
The Trump administration says it is now withholding all federal child care funding to the entire state. The agency says the state receives $185 million for 19,000 children, and now that money will be gone. And the agency did not specify any alternate plans for families who will be affected. DHS and the FBI said they were surging resources to Minnesota to investigate what they called suspected fraud sites. This all comes in response to a viral video posted by a MAGA content creator. He claims that he uncovered widespread fraud by Somali-run child care centers in the state. CNN is looking into those claims and has not independently verified the accusations, but the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services is taking the allegations at face value. Take a listen.
Intrepid journalists have made shocking and credible allegations of extensive fraud in Minnesota's child care programs. We believe the state of Minnesota has allowed scammers and fake daycares to siphon millions of taxpayer dollars over the past decade. Starting today, we require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment.
However, the so-called evidence comes from a man who has posted anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant content in the past. CNN's Whitney Wild speaks to the man behind that video and takes a look at his claims.
So let me go ahead and debunk something right away before we even get to this part. She said that he uncovered this story, 20 by Project Veritas. He didn't uncover it. Basically, what he did was he took his camera and he went around to these daycares, which again was already uncovered in 2020 by Project Veritas. And you need to ask yourself how this was able to go viral if it was already reported on in 2020. That's what I want you to hold on to. Now let's continue.
We're from CNN. Can we talk to you? This is MAGA YouTuber Nick Shirley. Back at a daycare in Minnesota, he alleged was a fraudulent facility in a now viral video.
People are going to say this is a left or right issue, but no, fraud is fraud. Over here. And so I'm not out here trying to put a twist on things.
Shirley's viral video, released over the weekend, in which he says he's uncovering tens of millions of dollars in fraud at Minneapolis daycares run by the Somali community, was retweeted by Elon Musk and Vice President J.D. Vance. In the video, Shirley tries to open locked doors and talk to people at various daycares he claims are frauds. Did you come during their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came the following day, later in the day. The point of it is not whether or not I came at the right time of their operation hours. The point is that blacked out doors, they can't give you any information. You call that number, no one answers. I wasn't trying to go inside, and there should be a way for somebody to actually be able to call that number and somebody to be able to answer. These aren't real businesses.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a daycare.
Be a reception.
It is. No.
So first he says, well, he came at around 11 and then he came later on in the day and they were asking him, did you come during operational hours. And he said, well, it doesn't matter if I came during operational hours or not. Someone should have been there if this is a legitimate business. Okay. So first and foremost, if there is fraud, there needs to be accountability. If they are fraudulently, if this is happening, if they are fraudulently taking money from the federal government and these businesses are not fully operational, yes, there needs to be accountability. That being said, though, you have to remember a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to tell you about him and who he really is, because even CNN didn't go as far enough to tell you who Nick really is. Number one, whenever somebody just seems to come out of nowhere and all of a sudden they go viral like this and it's blasted, be very cautious about people who come out of nowhere and all of a sudden just boom, just take off. There's usually something happening behind the scene. Two, the other thing I want you to pay attention to, notice who is targeted, right? Because see, what they don't tell you, what he doesn't tell you, is his family also participated in fraud. His family had a fraud lawsuit against them. But he's not going to tell you that. And there's a reason for that. Once I show you who he really is, all of this is going to make sense. Let's go on more here.
Every daycare is locked.
Have their doors are locked.
And so, okay, you bring up a fair point. Then why can't they actually give me information how to enroll a child?
Federal law enforcement has been investigating fraud in Minnesota for several years. Both Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel said on social media they've indicted dozens of defendants. DHS has posted multiple videos of agents they say are conducting a massive fraud investigation. Do you think that federal law enforcement hasn't done enough? I mean, they would say, look, these fraud cases have been going on, but they've already done like 80 indictments. The cases have been going on, for years.
And why did I show up one day in Minnesota and go to all these daycares, no children? They're receiving millions of dollars. We uncovered nearly $110 million in fraud in one day.
How do you know that all the allegations that you're making are true?
How do I know that they're true? Well, we showed you guys what was happening, and then you guys can go ahead and make your own analysis.
We're coming so we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
Yeah, I am 100% sure I'm true.
CNN is looking into Shirley's claims.
Hi, my name's Whitney Wild. I'm a correspondent for CNN.
We reached out to several of the daycares featured in the now viral video. Only one daycare facility answered and said they are a legitimate business.
Have you seen the videos, purporting that some of these daycares don't have kids inside?
Minnesotans say despite the new focus from the Trump administration, they have been sounding the alarm on fraud for years.
We have talked about fraud. We have gotten stories. We've tried to push this forward every way that we can.
At the daycare where Shirley showed back up, a stream of children walk inside. You're saying that this is a fraudulent daycare. There's kids being dropped off right now.
Yes. The Commissioner of Children literally said a week ago this place was closed. Did you know They're showing face right now.
A viral video, disputed claims, and their full fallout remains to be seen.
Dozens of fraud cases that
Okay, so let's go ahead and pause here, and then we're going to get into a little bit more detail that I wanted to show you guys. So I think what people aren't showing you about the story, and again, like I said, if there is fraud, that's why they have an investigation. If there is fraud, they need to be held accountable. Yes, there needs to be accountability. That's for anybody. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. That is for anyone. But what people are asking, including someone who was Alex Jones' co-host, which you're going to see in just a second, what people are asking is, why wasn't there all this attention around this in 2020 when it was originally reported? Why is there so much attention around it now? And this is the part that you need to dive into, because I'm seeing a lot of people talk about this, but they're not giving you the whole. People are saying, well, he didn't just start going viral. He's been going viral. Yeah, how'd that happen? Nick Shirley, I just want to give you a flashback because you need to know who the source is. You need to know where this is coming from. Nick Shirley, the guy behind the Minnesota daycare fraud video, once paid Hispanic day laborers he recruited at Home Depot $20 to hold up pro-Biden signs in front of the White House to gin up fears of an invasion. So if you'll see here, I don't know if everybody remembers this, but these guys here that held up those signs, they were paid to hold up these signs. And it said here in the article, a half a dozen Hispanic day laborers were paid $20 each to parade in front of the White House on camera, holding signs with slogans like "I love Biden" and "I need a work permit for my family." So, source. Now, does that mean that the story isn't true? Does it mean that there is no fraud? No, it doesn't mean that. But I'd like to ask, what is the big agenda? And what I think is weird is people aren't asking this question. People aren't asking, where was all this outrage when this story was reported in 2020? Why are we only hearing outrage about it now? And you're going to see the bigger picture here. Let's continue on to the next part. Z Squirrel. Actually, we'll go to this one first. People need to know who he is. Let's go into this video. Then we're going to go to the connection that he has to Cam Higbee. Listen to this.
I've seen Elon Musk amplifying this kid every 30 minutes on Twitter. And this was the moment that we all should have known that it is a grift and it is meant to distract. Because what, did they have these sweaters just like ready to go? Come on, man. This is a joke. Like, oh, we're going to sell hoodies now because we tried breaking into some daycares and they wouldn't let us in, or we came before or after hours. Like, dude, nobody wants you people showing up to daycares and trying to open the doors. You don't have kids. It's weird. But the worst part is Elon Musk is literally calling for Tim Walz to be arrested. But I got a question.
You're fucked, dude. I'm fucked. If we lose, I'm fucked. It does seem that way. You can't just be like, yo, I'm like, how long do you think my prison sentence is going to be? Do you think, will I see my children? I don't know.
I wonder why Elon would be in jail if Trump didn't win. Kind of makes everything in Pennsylvania make a lot more sense now, doesn't it? That's why he needed to do that $1 million giveaway every day, because he was fighting for his life. But you know what else?
These people are insane.
So they obviously wait for it.
Sleeping in the office.
In fact, when they did fund us, they realized that we were illegal immigrants.
Well, I'd say it's a gray area.
Gray area. Huh, that's funny. It's a gray area for Elon Musk. And it seems to be a gray area for all the white immigrants coming from South Africa. You know, the ones who all got picked up by ICE because they forgot to do the paperwork. It rules for thee, but not for me. Nick Shirley is just a useful pawn in this whole thing because they don't have Charlie Kirk anymore. Kyle Rittenhouse isn't viable no matter how many times they try. Erica Kirk, unfortunately, is the get in. And unfortunately, his first was a swing and a miss because Amy Bach has already been arrested. And like this stuff is already in the court system. And guess what it happened under, or who I should say? Joe Biden. That's right. It's already being addressed. So this isn't a big story. It's a nothing. And the fact that Donald Trump just took food out of the mouths of every American child that needs some type of government assistance and put that stress on those parents that didn't know they were going to have to find food for their kids on, New Year's Day. So
yeah, the unfortunate part is that other kids are going to be penalized because of this. And like I said, if there's fraud, there's an investigation, they need to be held accountable. But going forward, when we talk about the bigger agenda, this squirrel is on every damn thing. This squirrel always has it. Nick Shirley, who is being promoted by Elon Musk, JD Vance, and the entire conservative media sphere, is a fanatical Zionist Israel firster. He literally went to Israel to do propaganda tour just a few months back. All the Zionists are doing OMG Somalis, OMG Muslims for Israel. So for people who were not aware, and he started deleting some things. I'm going to show you another one. This was in March 14. Nick Shirley, I visited Israel-Gaza border with the last mayor of Gaza. We stood where Hamas launched its attacks. We saw the destruction and the aftermath of October 7th, and the mayor breaks down the money trail to expose who profits from war and who is funding the war. The documentary breaks down how Hamas operates and funds itself. The brutal history of Israel and Gaza, why Israel responded the way they did, the Iron Dome failure, the Nova Music Festival massacre, what really happened. This is the most intense investigation I've ever seen done and has been shadow banned on platforms like YouTube. You won't see this video from MSN. So this guy is a part of that same club as Cam Higbee. They were the same ones who went over to Israel, who were at the border, who created those propaganda videos to lie to the American people and let you believe that it's all Hamas and Israel has done nothing wrong. That's who Nick Shirley is. And there's more. Again, like I said, the squirrel is always on it. Let me put this here. I don't like the word, but has also been obsessively doing Zionist OMG Muslim takeover of America OMG propaganda. He's literally a paid Israel first cuck whose job it is to produce slop appealing to the base urges of right wingers to make them forget about being slaves of Israel. And this is where they get you. This is not to say that there is no fraud. But what it is to show you is Americans, we want you to see how your taxpayer dollars are just going to this because they really care about the Americans. Or are they doing it for a bigger agenda? What just happened in Somaliland? Do people realize that in Somalia, since Netanyahu announced that they are going into Somaliland, they recognize Somaliland independence, which is separate from Somalia, that they are going in there, going to build a military Palestinians from Gaza to have them displaced in Somaliland. Since that announcement, in Somalia, people are rising up. They are against what Israel is doing. And you coordinate this all together with what Nick is doing, with what Trump is doing, the anti-Somalian rhetoric here in the United States. This is all connected. It's not a coincidence. And this is where two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that there is fraud. It can also be true that this is a part of a bigger agenda. Let's go on some more here. Here's another one. I told you he started deleting stuff. Gen X girl, who is also another one that's on it. Can anyone with skills beyond me find this deleted post from Nick Shirley on TikTok? Link in the second post. There was a TikTok video that he created called Exploring Israel, Travel Experiences and Delicious Food. This is separate from the other one that I just showed you. All of a sudden, this video was now gone. Now, it wasn't removed by TikTok. TikTok is definitely pro-Israel. He removed it. Now they're trying to take stuff down. So see this? Link to the deleted post. She added the link as well. Let's go on to another one. Here's the Cam Higbee connection. All these guys roll together. Remember when I made that report, when I told you about the paid pro-Israel influencers that are being paid $7,000 per post? This is that group. Cam Higbee is a part of it. I'm going to show you another video where they were working together. So now you see Cam Higbee is doing the same thing, but not in Minnesota. He's doing it in Washington State. So do you guys see how this is coordinated? Let me go ahead and show you a little bit of this here.
My decoy went up and she could hear people rustling around on the other side of the ring camera as if they were listening to her but not responding.
Kristen Magnuson and I also went to this house right after you guys to see if we get the same response. And we sort of did. We saw the same thing, the windows with vinyl covering us.
Hey, is this Dagash Family Childcare?
No.
It's not Dagash Family Childcare.
No.
Okay, what's the name of the childcare here?
Obviously, Washington state records tell a completely different story.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to show you. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, there could be part of a bigger agenda, because I noticed something once again, like clockwork. The moment that the story came out again, because it came out in 2020, all of a sudden everyone's attention was directed over to, oh my God, it's the Somalis, it's them, it's them, it's them, instead of this issue with Israel. Because Israel isn't done. They know that they're losing support in the West, especially here in the United States. They know that there's this fraction within the Republican Party where people are split on this position of Israel. So what is the best way to get people back together again? Direct their attention to somebody else. I told you this all through 2024 about the false flags, because their goal is to make you despise Muslims once again, just like after 9/11, so that you can trust them again, so you can go back to supporting Israel. A lot of people walked away from supporting Israel since October 7th. Now here we go again. Now let me show you something else. Let's go back. Now I'm gonna show you these two guys together. There is Nick right there, and there's Cam Higbee. And this is Jack Pasibic. So he's an activist with Turning Point USA. So people connect the dots. I'm going to show you a little bit of this here.
The great Cam Higbee taken down. The tents got taken down. Oh, we've got Nick. I see Nick Sortor over there. Nick, come here. Come here.
Nick, Brandy.
What's going on? And Brandy. All right, he'll be back. Nick will come back. Brandy Krause is here.
Antifa fever dream.
Antifa's fever dream. Sab, tell us what this means that President Trump has finally convened this roundtable.
This is huge, Jack. This is historic. You know, as we were walking up today, I was asking the boys if they were ready to make history today. Antifa has been terrorizing American citizens.
So this was about Antifa, right? Now I'm showing you this to show you these people have a direct line to the president of the United States. Now I saw people on social media saying that, oh, it was just this random guy, random YouTuber, and he did such great journalism. It's called copy-paste journalism, where you're just doing what somebody else already did a couple years ago. So like I said, it was reported in 2020. But didn't you find it kind of strange by who was boosting them? That's something to pay attention to. Who is boosting them? JD Vance was doing the boosting. Elon Musk was doing the boosting. But these guys have a direct line to the president of the United States. There's Nick right there, right over here. And there's Cam Higbee, who I just showed you. We're going a little bit more here.
For almost a decade at this point. So to have the president of the United States bring all of us together who have been beaten, harassed, threatened, you name it, to come and tell our stories in front of the nation is huge and historic. And again, it's just an honor to be here with Andy, with all of the other reporters around me who have put the time and effort in, who have shed literal blood to show Americans what's going on.
Well, and speaking of which, you know, we
So that's them two right there. So everyone see the connection. Let's continue on. We're going PBD podcast and listen to what he says, right? Because he's going to say something where he sounds a lot like Nick Fuentes. Listen to this.
These people are like, I saw something, someone's calling me like a PDF. They're saying all these crazy allegations. I'm like, hey, what sucks for them is they're never going to be able to get me. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. I'm a virgin. I don't have sex with random girls. You're not going to catch me on no sexual allegation charges. I don't have any addictions. I don't have any vices. So what are these people going to get me for? They're done. I'm religious. I believe in God. I'm everything they hate. I
love that.
So what are they going to get me for? They can't get me for anything. Like, they're going to come after me for my personality or for a stunt I did in high school. Maybe that's maybe the best thing they could get me for, is for Nick Shirley being a young, reckless teenager, just like any.
Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Except I'll show you what Nick Fuentes said about this in just a second too. It's really interesting. And then I want you to hear what Owen said. Owen used to co-host with Alex Jones. Owen was calling out some things about Israel as well. You guys know he's not with Alex Jones anymore. So listen to what he said about this.
Happens again. So I'm not really sure whose victory it is, but I am just as mad as anybody about this fraud. I'm just a little curious why now it's a big story and why it wasn't in 2020. And that tells me somebody wants it to be a big story right now. They want you to be looking at this and they don't want you to be looking at something else. And by the way, as all of this is going on, of course, the U.S. taxpayer just spent another $8 billion for Israel. So just add it to the tab. It's like, oh, here we go again. Yeah, exactly. Here we go again. Here we go again. So you tell me who has selective outrage. If you're only talking about fraud in Minnesota, or if you're only talking about fraud with Somalis, or if you're only talking about fraud with these daycare centers, all this stuff, folks, your whole government is a fraud. Your entire system is a fraud. The entire federal government is fraud. Most of your local and state government is a fraud. You pay 30% in taxes is a total fraud. You don't get a return on investment there. You don't get any value out of that. Somebody else is getting a value out of that. They're either outright stealing it, like the Somalis in Minnesota, or they're sending it overseas to their friends with foreign interest, or they're sending it around to their friends with special interests. So the selective outrage here really has me mad. And here's why. I think we all kind of see this country needs some serious change, some serious reform. We elected Trump. We thought he would be that change agent. We're not so sure that's the case anymore. But if you think that, oh, let's get outraged over the Somali thing and maybe there'll be a couple of arrests. Folks, they started talking about arrests. They were posting about arrests and indictments and pleas that they got 4 years ago.
I'm telling you guys.
Those were official government accounts. Official Trump administration members were posting about indictments and pleas and arrests they made 4 years ago, pretending like it was in response to this latest Somali fraud. It wasn't. So that's almost a fraud in and of itself. The whole system is a fraud. And so I'm just sitting here watching everybody, oh, the Somalis, the daycares, Minnesota. Folks, the whole system is a fraud. The whole damn system is a fraud. So if you're upset over the Somalis, which you should be, and you're upset over this fraud, which you should be, don't stop there. This is like a stepping ladder. This is like a stepping stone to get to where it really is going on. Why do you think they kicked Elon Musk out of DC when he said, we're going to find $1.5 trillion in annual fraud? And they said, Elon, get the hell out of here. Folks, the Somali fraud is like nothing. You know that Trump, again, here's your double standards. You know that Trump pardoned, well, he commuted the sentence of the biggest healthcare fraudster. And you know why he did that? Because a Jewish lobby called him and asked him to do it. And so he did it. So the number one healthcare fraudster of all time, Insa Flores is his name. He ended up getting arrested again. He committed more crimes. And then he went to his synagogue and allegedly was engaging in domestic violence and abuse at his synagogue. So, that's who Trump pardoned. And there were people pressuring him to do that. He had he was the number one healthcare fraudster of all time.
Number one. And that's my thing. It's the selective outrage. That's my thing. So people need to understand that two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that there is fraud with the daycare centers in Minnesota. Yeah, that can be true. It can also be true that there's a bigger agenda at play here. I do not think it is a coincidence that you're seeing these stories, this story once again emerge, but this time it's bigger and more popular than ever, right after Israel said that they recognize it. They were the first country to do that. The other countries in the West don't know. Nobody else does. First country to do that. Right after they said that we're going to put military bases there and we're going to, work with them with oil and gas. Right after they said we're going to start to bring Palestinians from Gaza and put them in Somaliland. Right after people in Somalia started to rise up and say, hell no, Israel, stay out of here. Right after just recently, Benjamin Netanyahu announced that they're going to go into more countries in Africa and liberate them. All of this is connected. It's the timing, the bigger agenda, and again, to his point, the selective outrage. Now, I probably don't agree with him on much, but even he is calling this out. Eric, can you pull up, go to Nick Fuentes' Twitter. I want to show people what Nick Fuentes said. And then I'm going to show you guys what an Israeli journalist said about their involvement in this. Let me show you the journalist first. Watch this. Israeli says Mossad was behind the Somali fraud story. Listen to what this guy says. This isn't me. This is them telling you this. Listen to this.
How is the Israeli Mossad related to the recent corruption that was discovered in Minnesota? You're not going to believe it, but there actually is a substantial connection, and it runs through the Israeli Prime Minister office. I'll start from the end. Israel just established relationships with Somaliland, which is not Somalia. But the back funds, and again, I think the initial number that came out is about $9 billion. Again, this is crazy. American taxpayer money of, let's say, $15 billion that they imagine were stolen or misdiverted from public funds. About 9 billion of those were sent back to terrorism, or what they would call the Muslim Brotherhood actions, and this is tied into Qatar. And Israel.
See, this is what I was trying to explain to you. So he is now saying, he's Israeli, he is now saying that that money that they received from the daycare centers, that money was sent back for terrorism in Qatar. And this is how they're going to reel people right back in again to support Israel. First of all, stop it with the Qatar. I'm so tired with the Qatar. Qatar is aligned with the United States. It really is. It's like an extension of the United States. It's like our pinky or something like that. So I don't know why they keep saying Qatar. So there's that. But do you see where this is going? So now it has gone from they were frauding the government, and the money that they got, they actually sent that money back towards terrorist organizations. He's telling all this right out in the open.
Of course, was behind the scenes, and I know people love these conspiracies, in leaking some of the information that is responsible or related to the funding of terrorism using that exact money. So the fact that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has a phone call and recognizes Somaliland is tied into Qatar being a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, tied into the Somali funds that were stolen in Minnesota funding terrorism in the Middle East. That is a story that came out right now. It really blows my mind how global terrorism works, but it's such an amazing thing that it was uncovered, and I'm sure there's more news to come on this topic.
Again, this story was reported back in 2020, and they're all saying the same message. It was uncovered 2020, but it works for their agenda. So now they're linking it to, they got this money, they did this fraud, and now, it's terrorism. And I see people falling for it, just like that, bam, getting people right back in line. Let me show you what Nick Fuentes said, because he responded to this. Right here. All of the complaining about Somalians will result in nothing. No mass arrests, no mass deportations, nothing transformative. We all know that. This is more slop designed to rally the GOP base back to this failing joke of a government and pivot from shitting on. I agree with him on that. This is what I was trying to tell you. And I think he's right. Ain't nothing really going to come of that. This part here, Andrew. Nick Shirley was literally hired to distract people from the Epstein files. And I saw people online, people losing their minds, and we don't care. It's fraud. It's fraud. We don't care who the messenger is. It's fraud. It's fraud. I'm like, okay. Then they should be held accountable. But now it goes from it's fraud, but according to the Israeli there, they took that money and they sent it back to terrorist organizations. So see how that works? So, as I said before, there's always two sides to a story. And then another thing to keep in mind is that two things can be true at the same time. So keep an eye on this. I told you guys, I ran through that list before. I may have to show it again for 2026, but there's a whole list, a whole chart of all the paid pro-Israel influencers, the ones getting $7,000 per post. And that's where some of this stuff is coming from. They trying to help out us, or they trying to help out Israel? Hey guys, this was a savvy clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.
A massive fraud scheme uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services has been allegedly siphoned indirectly into the pockets of the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Somali immigrants in Minnesota were unfortunate among us, including the latest federally funded autism services. The autism fraud scheme reportedly amassed $14 million through Medicare claims for services that were never provided, involving kids who never had autism. And the Somali immigrants behind this web of schemes have allegedly stolen billions from taxpayers, much of the money going back to the Somali government, where it would then end up in the hands of terrorists. Manhattan Institute investigative reporter Ryan Thorpe was one of the first exposing the schemes for their ties to terrorism. With us now, Ryan, a line from your story stuck out. The largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, and you cite an unnamed source for that. What is the evidence that all of this money that was taken and the billions upon billions of increased funding in Minnesota for social services ended up in Somalia?
Well, billions of dollars of government welfare money is missing in the state of Minnesota.
How do we define missing?
Well, the fraud is so bad that the U.S. Attorney's Office has come out and indicated that they believe their entire government programs, where the fraudulent claims outstrip the legitimate ones. There are cases where indictments have come down or guilty pleas are already in to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars that were fraudulently obtained, filing false claims alongside doctored paperwork. And the indictments are continuing to come. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has made very clear that this is a network of fraud schemes stacked upon fraud schemes, and that while the true dollar figure in terms of stolen funds at this point isn't quite clear, it's safe to say that we're talking about billions of dollars.
Okay. It's pretty wild, some of the things that you lay out, including one group called Feeding the Future, that went from getting $3.4 million in 2019 to $200 million 2 years later. They grew faster than NVIDIA. How did nobody see that? Or is it that people and the government and those who are supposed to be the watchdogs, like Tim Walz, like Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, there just weren't looking?
I think it's safe to say that there was a real willingness or inability among Democratic state officials in Minnesota to recognize some pretty obvious alarm bells here. All across these programs, claims were skyrocketing, absolutely spiraling out of control over a short period of time. And the reality is that the Somali community, which is where these large-scale fraud rings have been concentrated within this population in the state, it is a sizable voting bloc. It is a voting bloc you have to win if you're going to win political office in Minneapolis. And so I think that was likely an incentive here that made some people not want to look too closely at what's been going on.
Wow. And that would explain why now it's the U.S. attorney looking into it rather than the state law enforcement or state fraud investigators. Is there any indication, Ryan, as you get, and obviously, it's one of those things you drop an investigative piece, and then all of a sudden you get 1,000 more tips that this goes higher, like actually into state government? You get the last 30 seconds.
Matt, so I don't want to get out in front of my skis here. What I can say is that this story has generated additional tips, and it is something that we are continuing to look into as we push forward with our efforts to expose the fraud rings that have been taking advantage of the generosity of Minnesota taxpayers.
Yeah, stunning also how little pickup this has gotten around the country in terms of the rest of the media. Applaud your guys' continued work on it. Ryan, come back and talk to us as you uncover more, all right?
Excellent. Sounds good.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
Convicted sex trafficker and longtime Jeffrey Epstein associate Ghislaine virtual deposition Fifth Amendment right.
She had an opportunity today to answer questions that every American has, questions that would be very important in this investigation, and she chose to invoke her Fifth Amendment right.
The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Maxwell for testimony last July. Today, they say they tried to get her to respond to a variety of questions relevant to their Epstein investigation.
Who were the other co-conspirators? Who were the other men who raped these underage girls? Did she have any conversations about a deal with Donald Trump?
Maxwell is serving a 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking. And in a statement, her attorney said she is prepared to speak freely if she gets clemency from President Trump.
She is campaigning over and over again to get that pardon from President Trump. And this president has not ruled it out. And so that is why she's continuing to not cooperate with our investigation.
Maxwell's virtual up to the Justice Department's unredacted Epstein files.
I was interested in certain redactions that seemed puzzling to me, and I wanted to go and see were there actually names of victims in there that caused the redactions, and in the overwhelming number of cases, there were not names of victims there.
Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says 5 more depositions related to the Epstein probe are scheduled, including with former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Erica Brown, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
We have a bombshell revelation from the Epstein files. You guys know we have been following this very closely, and every day it seems like there's something else that is announced or released. And this one is probably the most damning expose of all, if I had to pick one. We had a lot of questions surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and this drafted statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office really does confirm what many of you have believed for a long, long time. This one is the one that is really making people go, holy crap. This is why they didn't want these files released. Obviously, of course, to protect powerful people, but not just that, also to protect what actually happened to Jeffrey Epstein that night in that cell. It is this release here, and it was Clint Russell from Liberty Lock Pod who shared it. He was the first one that I saw that shared this. And I double checked the files as well. And I can assure you it is there. Couldn't believe this was real. So I double checked the DOJ site. It's real. U.S. Attorney Berman announced Epstein's death with letterhead dated the day before he was found dead. It gets weirder. Bill Barr announced Berman's resignation less than a year later. Berman denied he was resigning and was then removed by Barr on June 20th of 2020. Trump denied any involvement, but it was confirmed by later reporting that, in fact, it was Trump who wanted Berman removed. The rabbit hole is endless. So let's get to the document in question, shall we? Here's a screenshot of it here. This is a draft from the United States Attorney's Office, the Southern District of New York, U.S. Attorney General. You see it says here, Jeffrey Berman, for immediate release. Check the date, Friday, August 9th, 2019. It even has the contact information here. So what does this statement say? Statement of Manhattan U.S. Attorney on the death of defendant Jeffrey Epstein. Earlier this morning, the Manhattan Correctional Center confirmed that Jeffrey Epstein, who faced charges brought by this office of engaging in sex trafficking of minors has been found unresponsive in his cell and pronounced dead shortly thereafter. Today's events are disturbing, and we are deeply aware of their potential to present yet another hurdle to giving Epstein's many victims their day in court. To the many others who have yet to do so, let me reiterate that we remain committed to standing for you, and our investigation of the conduct charge in the indictment, which included a conspiracy count, remains ongoing. Now, this is 2019, and they told you that this remained ongoing. As we know, that was not the case. Okay. But the important part about this draft right here, and I'm going to show you the one, is the date. Friday, August 9th, 2019. This was the first draft that Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell. But there's just one problem. Jeffrey Epstein didn't allegedly die on August 9th. He was pronounced dead on August 10th. That was a Saturday. This is the most recent bombshell from the Epstein files that has many people in shock. Now, many of us have said for the longest time that we believe that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered, that he did not unalive himself. And I stood by that for the longest time. And I think many of you did as well. But now you have another piece of evidence that shows you that the U.S. Attorney Office had already drafted correspondence on August the 9th. He was found dead, allegedly, August the 10th. So even if this is the first draft, the date should be the 10th. Now, I know many people may see this and they may say, well, maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe they just happened to get the date wrong. Sometimes people confuse dates. Okay. But the day is also there. The day says Friday. August 10th was Saturday. Let's get to the final draft. Let's show you here. Shout out to Aaron Parnas for sharing this. The final press release sent out on August 10th added the words apparent, we're going to say unaliving because it's YouTube, apparent unaliving in the first sentence. Those words did not appear in the press release dated August 9th. So let's look at the final press release. United States Attorney Office, Southern District of New York. Okay, have it here. The date's right here, Saturday, August 10th. The Manhattan U.S. Attorney General, Jeffrey Berman said earlier this morning the charges brought by this office of engaging in sex trafficking of minors had been found unresponsive in his cell and was pronounced dead shortly thereafter, an apparent unaliving. So this is the final draft. Again, all this is in the Epstein files. So now all of a sudden it goes from found unresponsive to unaliving. And the dates are different. So they said he died on August 10th. The first draft said August 9th. The first draft did not say that he unalived himself. It just said he was found unresponsive. Continue on here. Today's events are disturbing, and we are deeply aware of their potential to present yet another hurdle to give Epstein victims their day in court, to this brave young women, yada, yada. So that's the same verbiage there. And again, that is dated August 10th. So we got a problem, ladies and gentlemen. Because you see, now you're starting to see other reasons why they didn't want you to see these files. Like, obviously, of course, the most obvious reason is that they're trying to protect powerful people. But then there's little things like this, right? which basically shows you one or two things happen. Let's say you still don't think that there was any foul play here. Okay. Then that means that the U.S. Attorney's Office is completely clumsy and reckless, right? Because I could even understand maybe you made a mistake with the date, the 9th, the 10th, maybe you just got the date wrong, but the day, like you said, Friday, August 9th. Now, all of a sudden, it does not make any sense to me. In the first draft, you said that he was found unresponsive. They didn't say that he unalived himself. And in the final statement, all of a sudden, the day is the 10th, and it says he unalived himself. And then they will point to people and get mad at people for asking questions when it's quite obvious what is happening here. Just more evidence, in my opinion, that shows that he was killed. And if he wasn't killed, he was taken away. Let's not forget what another person said. Let's go ahead and go to this part here, ladies and gentlemen. We have to remind you of this. There was an individual who anonymously posted on 4chan this morning of Epstein's death, August 10th, 2019, has been identified in the Epstein files as Roberto Grijalva. He was an officer at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, shackled in a medical wheelchair, while at the same time an unauthorized trip van arrived at the prison, which he believes took Epstein away the night before the news broke of his death. Now, Roberto had said that he saw Epstein leave. He was taken away from his cell on August 9th. The first draft of that letter from the U.S. Attorney Office is dated August 9th. Let's go on here. I just want to show you. We have the images here. Roberto Grijalva up here is highlighted, signatory details. So you can see, yes, this person was real. Yes, they did exist. Okay, let's go here. This is the post. It was posted anonymously at that point in time. And it's dated August 10th. Not saying anything after this. Please do not try to dox me. But last night, after 4:15 count, they took him medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. So first of all, they took him. We have to ask the question, who is they? Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. Trip van just shows up magically. We do not do releases on the weekend unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single man cell and is supposedly unalive. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number, and a guy in a green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. Give me a second. This guy said this August 10th, 2019. So something else that's very damning here. Notice that he said they don't do transfers on the weekend. All of a sudden, a van shows up to do a transfer, according to him, allegedly. He believed that he was switched out. At this point in time, especially you guys know how 4chan is. So at this point in time, this is just seen as some anonymous. We have that statement from the U.S. Attorney Office, which can kind of point to this and show maybe Roberto wasn't crazy. Maybe he was telling the truth. And this is why I push back on this whole conspiracy thing, because conspiracy doesn't necessarily mean something is false. It also doesn't mean it's bad. Conspiracy, in my opinion, from what I've seen over the years, means that it's something that goes against the status quo, the approved narrative, oftentimes from the State Department, etc. But no one wanted to hear this at that point in time. And now you have that letter. And again, he said that he was shaking. United States government memorandum, Metropolitan Correctional Center, New York, August 12th. Warden in Dye. On February 9th, 2019, approximately 1:50, Gradrova passed on to oncoming staff member Officer Davis and present shift staff SOS Shakir and Officer Joyner. That inmate, Reyes, was going WAB and possibly may not return. Also, that inmate Epstein will be needing a cellmate upon arrival from his attorney visit. Again, look at the date, August 9th. Memorandum went out on the 12th. It says on August 9th. And see, this is why I'm saying, like, now you look at things a little bit differently. And I want to go back to that video footage that we saw before. Do you guys remember when the DOJ, Cash and Pam Bondi and all of them, they said, we've got the video footage outside of his cell to show you that obviously there was no foul play there? Remember what people noticed from that video footage? Here's a reminder, just in case you forgot. Yesterday, the DOJ released 10 hours of Epstein cell footage and got caught cutting out a full 60 seconds. The feed jumps clean from 11:59 to midnight. No explanation, just gone. That's probably the exact moment he was calmly walked out of his cell. Now, let me show you this here. The time is right here in the bottom left-hand corner, so you can see 11:58:57. So pay attention to that. Whoop, there's the jump. There it is. There it is. See how quickly? Boo! Right there. Just skips. Oh, dear God. What happened to that whole minute? Now, when this was called out, Pam Bondi said, oh, well, the cameras just automatically shut down for like 1 minute at a certain amount of time. That's normal procedure. Da 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 da. The point is, there is a lot that can happen in 1 minute. A lot that can happen. You ever try timing yourself for 1 minute? I don't know, like maybe like when you're at the gym and you're taking like a rest from a set and you're like, let me set 1 minute. I do a little bit longer or whatever. You ever try to like actually time 1 minute, wait 1 minute and see, it feels like it takes so much longer because you're waiting for that time to go by? What can happen in 1 minute? Especially if they took him out the other way. Doesn't have to come out this way. What if he came out back that way? Right? And then there's something else, because you see, we're not fools. This came from the Daily Mail. You know, you got to take a grain of salt sometimes, but considering everything else that's being revealed, I think we need to take a look at this. They wanted both Epstein and me dead. Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate levels extraordinary claim that the government deliberately left Epstein unprotected in the jail cell. This was reported February 6th. Let's go down here. Right about here. Targeloni, that's his cellmate, asserted a terrifying conspiracy. See again how they keep using this word conspiracy? That's to discredit. That Epstein was deliberately exposed to violence as part of a calculated effort to ensure he would not survive long enough to stand trial. I was on purpose, nor was Epstein. I truly believe that the government wanted both Epstein and me dead. Fast forward to up here, it says, the former cop further alleges that shortly after he was transferred to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn after Epstein's death, he was assaulted by other inmates with a lead pipe, along with other violent interactions with other inmates where he was nearly beaten to death. Let's go on a little bit more here. It's just showing evidence that he was imprisoned there. The murder cop who Epstein had already accused of an attempted killing just 3 weeks before his final breath now insists that his proximity to the financier was a calculated hit. It is no coincidence that prior to the trial, I was transferred to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan and deliberately placed in the same cell as Jeffrey Epstein. In the petition, he also claims he was accused and wrongfully convicted, saying that he was the target of the lead prosecutor, former United States Attorney Maureen Comey, daughter of the former FBI Director James Comey. Interesting how that works out. Goes on to say here, for a prisoner looking to submit a pardon petition, the journey begins with the warden. Because he is still serving time, Targilone's request is technically a petition for commutation of sentence, a formal plea for the president to cut his time short. So he says that he was wrongfully accused, but he was, I guess, placed in the same cell with Epstein. But what I found interesting about this is that he said that he believed that this was on purpose, that they deliberately did this, that Epstein was deliberately exposed to violence to make sure that he would not survive. So we go again back to there's no, in my opinion, I don't believe the latter, by the way. For those wondering, I don't believe the latter, that they just made a mistake and got the date wrong. I don't believe the latter. I believe this was calculated. I believe he was killed, and many of you do too. And now you have this statement from the United States Attorney's Office that just makes things a little bit even more suspicious. Everything that you have been told about Epstein from corporate media, because they're not even going as far, from corporate media and from the State Department, and especially even Benjamin Netanyahu's getting into all this, from Israel as well, you need to have reasonable doubt. Because the reality is, if Epstein would have survived and would have stood trial, he was probably going to talk. And they didn't want that to happen. I got to tell you guys, I think a lot of times people look at people who are called conspiracy theorists or whatever, and they're like, these people are crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. But I got to tell you that when it comes to this Epstein situation, I think people about Epstein, I think for years, not as much as I have been the past week, because there's so much to go through with these files. But the reality is that the US government, they wanted you, actually the US government, the FBI, the intel agencies, they really wanted people to just look the other way on this one. They did not expect for people to press them for these files like Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And the reality is, without them doing that, we don't have these files. And we still don't have all of the files. But they didn't expect this to happen. They figured, well, everybody knows this guy was a creep. It'll just go by the wayside. But that didn't happen. And Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino, even though he quit, all of them are complicit. They lied to your face and told you there was nothing to see here. They saw the same files that you and I saw. And actually, they even saw more, because we still don't have all the files. These people are liars. and they need to be held accountable. All of these people, there need to be demands right now that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel resign immediately. And those demands need to come from us, the people, but also Congress needs to make that demand. These people need to resign. So I have more information that's going to be coming forward about other things that just came out about these Epstein files, that I have to do these in separate videos just because it's so much information. But when we get to all of it, whew, it just gets crazier and crazier. Hey guys, this was a savvy clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.